Today, we're going to be talking about some of the most disturbing FNAF fan games ever created. From horrifying creature designs to worlds that feel twisted beyond explanation, these games capture the feeling of stepping directly into someone's nightmare. Some of these are so unsettling that they're hard to forget, so let's get into it. Depravity. Something that plagues several corners of the internet. Whether you like to think about it or not, disgusting people lurk everywhere. They're in every community, interacting with countless people, and in the worst cases, interacting with minors. They corrupt even the most wholesome of communities and snake their way into people's trust. But even the slimiest of snakes get the light shined on their dark desires eventually. And while it may hurt people knowing that someone they looked up to or someone who created something they really enjoyed were one of these snakes, it's always important to remember, though, that a bad apple doesn't always spoil the whole orchard. Today, we'll be talking about an incredibly infamous game in the Five Nights at Freddy's community. I'm not the first, nor will I be the last to speak about it, but I and many other sensible people are capable of separating the art from the artist, and are plenty capable of commenting and criticizing a piece of media without attaching its creator to it. And that's what I'm going to be doing today. Towards the end of this video, I will also be talking about the creator of this game to give you a better understanding of what he was like before he seemingly left the internet. If things are about to get uncomfortable or depraved, I will give ample warning before we talk about said subjects. But in general, viewer discretion is advised. Come with me as we dive into the sick and depraved world of Dormitibus. But before we talk about the disgusting story of this game that would make most normal people want to throw up, we first have to talk about the actual gameplay, which I'll tell you is definitely something. I'll let you be the judge of whether or not it's actually good. There's no better place to start than Night 1, which I will mention, Dormitibus takes a different approach to nights than most FNAF games. Generally speaking, FNAF games have 5 nights, corresponding to 1 work week on the job, with a typical 6th day of overtime and 7th optional night to round out the week. Since in Dormitibus we play as a character who isn't actually working anywhere, Dormitibus is not tied to a typical week, instead having 10 nights rather than the typical 6. So let's dive right into Night 1. Let's start by talking about this goofy-ass office. You can travel from one side of the office to the other. One side of the office lets you look at your cameras, and the other side of the office has literally fucking nothing. But I'll go over why the useless side of the office is technically not useless in a moment. Another question you may have is, why the hell do we run under the table to get to the other side of the room when there's plenty of space on both sides of the table to walk around? Now you see, the answer to that question is fuck you. But now let's actually talk about some animatronics. As usual, I will explain each animatronic as they're introduced into the game, and on Night 1, we only have one animatronic to deal with, that being Havoc Freddy. Try your best not to focus on these goofy-ass designs. They have their own charm, in a way. Havoc Freddy is one of the most simple characters in all of Dormitibus. Freddy will move throughout the cameras, slowly inching towards your office. He arrives at your left door, and when he does, you can turn to your left to double-check that he's there. You'll be able to see him peering in at you. When he's there, you'll need to run to the other side of the room. At that point, he will almost immediately go away. I have no idea why this scares him away. I guess he's brain dead, but I'm not going to complain about an easy mechanic. Fun fact, you can actually make this mechanic even easier by never even checking if Freddy is at your door. Freddy makes a very noticeable sound cue when he arrives at your door, that being the sound of a door creaking directly in your left ear. I wonder if the other animatronics will be any harder. As mentioned, Havoc Freddy is the only enemy in Night 1, so beating it should be a cakewalk. What does Night 2 have in store? Well, Night 2 doesn't have Havoc Freddy present, and this is where I want to bring up something about this game that I actually think is pretty cool. In most FNAF games, as the nights go on, more and more animatronics will be added, and on top of that, they will become more and more aggressive. Dormitibus takes a different approach. Because of how many characters there are, it would not be possible to deal with all of them at once if their AI levels were super high. So instead, the game experiments with animatronic combinations, pairing a few animatronics together, rather than throwing all of them at you at the same time, which I think is actually pretty cool. But for animatronics in Night 2, we have Havoc Chica and Am I Real, also known as Cake Bear. Let's start with Havoc Chica, as her mechanic is the easiest to deal with of the two. Havoc Chica is pretty much just a slightly more annoying version of Havoc Freddy, with one deep, cutting, wounding flaw that I'll get to later. Chica will move around the building and make her way to your right door. Once Chica gets to your door, you can turn to check if she's there, but like Freddy, she also makes a very obvious sound cue, that being laughing in your right ear. When Chica is at the door, all you need to do is run to the useless side of the room and stare at Chica. Once she leaves, you will have to very quickly run back to the camera side of the room. If you don't move back fast enough, Havoc Cupcake will have a feast with your yeast. That's disgusting. I'm sorry. Oh my god. Now it's time to talk about Am I Real? Am I Real moves around the cameras at random. Whenever he enters a new camera, he will audibly state which camera he moved to. Once you hear him say a camera, you will have to switch to that camera and check which form he's in. Am I Real has two possible forms, one form being Am I Real, a gross, Springtrap looking design, and the other form being Cake Bear, a much more normal Freddy looking design. If you check the camera and see Cake Bear, you're free to continue playing the game as usual, no call for alarm. However, if you check the camera and you see Am I Real, you will have to stay and stare at that camera for what can feel like at times an entire minute, until Am I Real turns back into Cake Bear. Now, this may sound scary, especially when you think about the fact that in order to run to the other side of the room to avoid Havoc Chica and Freddy, you have to turn the cameras off. But the game knew this would be a problem, so when you shut the cameras off to move to the other side of the room, it will still count as you staring at that camera, meaning that Am I Real will still turn back to Cake Bear even if you're on the other side of the room, as long as the last camera you were looking at was Am I Real's. If you don't watch Am I Real, he will appear at your right door, and once he's there, there's nothing you can do to stop him from giving you a rough spanking that a lot of you freaks will really like. If you can manage all of that, then congratulations! You're ready to move on to Night 3. Night 3 uses Havoc Freddy, Am I Real, and two new characters, Soul Cage and Molten Evil. I'll cover Molten Evil first. Molten Evil will only ever appear in your office. When you see him, he will start to cover your screen with blue plasma. Once this plasma is on your screen, you will have to play dead by looking up at the ceiling. Don't ask. I know it doesn't make any sense, but just pretend like it does for me. After looking at the ceiling for long enough, the plasma will go away and you'll be safe to look down again. If you look up before the plasma is on your screen, Molten Evil will wait until you look back down before putting the plasma on your screen. So looking up early really only just stalls him. Soul Cage is somewhat similar in a way. Soul Cage will move around the cameras and slowly piece itself together. Once it's put together fully, it will make its way to your right door. Once he arrives, he too will play a sound cue to let you know he's there. When he does, you'll have to look over at him. Afterwards, he'll enter your office and move up onto your ceiling. In order to get him to leave, all you have to do is stare up at the ceiling at him until he goes away. If you haven't noticed yet, every single character can be dealt with by staring at them. And if you're hoping that the other characters will be different, most of them will cause you to be sorely disappointed. Hate to break it to you. Wait, who am I kidding? I love breaking bad news. Night 4 only introduces one new character, but the returning characters are Havoc Freddy, Havoc Chica, and Am I Real? The new character is Havoc Puppet. Havoc Puppet moves around the cameras and makes its way to your back window, which is located right behind your computer. Once Havoc Puppet appears in your window, it will make a very noticeable sound cue. At that point, all you have to do is turn around to your window and stare at it until it goes away. Are you starting to notice a possible game mechanic flaw with Dormitibus? Literally every character is answered by looking at them, and that's literally it. Hopefully, we get a new character soon that's at least a little different. Holy fucking shit, this new character is bullshit. Okay, let's take a step back and relax for a second. Every character up until this point has been Baby Caca Easy Mode. Night 5 consists of Soul Cage, Havoc Puppet, Am I Real, and the two brand new Wombo combo, Havoc Foxy and Golden Call. Havoc Foxy and Golden Call are pretty much one and the same, as one of them really can't work without the other. Havoc Foxy is on camera 5, something I thought was weird because the phone guy on this night says that he's on camera 4, which is just flat out wrong, but let's move past that. Havoc Foxy has 3 phases on his camera, which the final has Foxy standing out of his curtains. You can slow down Foxy by watching his camera, and this will become very important because you want to avoid his 3rd phase as much as you can. However, this can prove difficult because of one character I'm sure you've already thought about, Am I Real? With Am I Real hogging most of your camera time, Foxy is free to buttfuck you as much as he wants. Once Foxy reaches phase 3, Golden Call comes into play. After reaching phase 3, Golden Call will send a voicemail to your computer with a Trojan virus attached. In order to remove the Trojan, you'll have to type in a password. How do you get the password? Well, this is when Phase 3 Foxy becomes important. While in Phase 3, Foxy will be holding a sign with the randomly generated phrase on it. You'll have to read the phrase on the sign and find the longest word. The longest word will be the password you need to get rid of the Trojan. Once you remove the Trojan, you will have to very quickly run to the other side of the office and watch the right side door as Foxy will soon be approaching. Once Foxy peers in, all you have to do is stare at him until he goes away. Afterwards, you'll be free to go back to your cameras and resume business as usual. Congrats! You've successfully survived a golden call attack. Are you stressed? Well, you should be, because you're going to be seeing a lot more of that. Again, the real problem with Havoc Foxy and Golden Call isn't really their mechanics. That's fine. The problem really comes down to Am I Real? Again, Am I Real constantly requires your attention as he moves around the cameras often. Just by himself, he'll take away from your time stalling Foxy, and once you get a Trojan, you'll have to stop looking at Am I Real to find the password. But not watching Am I Real will get you killed really easily. Generally speaking, from my experience, you want to drop everything for Golden Call, get the password in as fast as you can, quickly switch back to Am I Real's camera before running to the other side of the room to watch Foxy. I feel like this will give you the most success. Night 6 includes Havoc Foxy, Havoc Chica, Molten Evil, and Am I Real. While that alone may sound like a very unfun time, just wait until I introduce the next most frustrating character on the planet, the BOA, or as I like to call it, Boa, aka Boa Bitch Boy. Boa starts in a box on the cameras and slowly emerges from it, afterwards making its way to your right door. Once there, it will give you a sound cue. When you hear it, you will need to quickly move to the other side of the room. Something pretty interesting about Boa is that he actually speaks to you. If you're running to the other side of the room, Boa says this. Once you get to the other side of the office, just like most characters, all you have to do is look at it. You might be wondering why this character is so frustrating if he acts exactly the same as Havoc Chica. Well, the answer to that question is simple. Boa Bitch Boy sits at your door for approximately 17 years, and that number came from countless hours of crunching the numbers, analyzing algorithms. I promise it's very accurate. That's seriously why Boa is such a difficult character to deal with. Mixed with all the other characters that require so much of your attention, having a character that requires double or maybe even triple the amount of time can feel like a purgatory. But if you can handle that, you'll be on to Night 7. Night 7 contains Soul Cage, Molten Evil, and the deadly Wombo combo of Havoc Foxy, Golden Call, and Am I Real. No new characters on this night, but I'm sure it's just so that players have some time to find some strategies that can fend off the Butthole Trilogy gang. Night 8 is where this game cranks the dial up to 1,000. While it introduces no new characters, the combo of characters present is enough to make any grown man cry. I know I did. Night 8 consists of Havoc Freddy, Havoc Chica, Havoc Foxy, Golden Call, Am I Real, and the icing on the cake, the Boa. This lineup of characters is actually so disgusting, I find it difficult to use vocabulary fitting enough to describe my disgust. I could dish out 100 vulgarities, and it still wouldn't be enough to portray the feeling of dread you get while trying to beat this night. The Wombo combo mixed with the Boa is already bad enough, but throw Freddy and Chica into the mix and you're itching for somebody to commit quintuple homicide on everybody in their domicile. This is probably the most infamous night in this entire game. There's a one-on-one boss fight on a later night, but that doesn't even compare to this bullshit. You want to know the main issue? The main issue is that this night is entirely dependent on luck. That's the worst part. Most people who play FNAF will tell you that luck is the most unenjoyable part of any FNAF game because it doesn't matter how much you practice. Your chances of winning is entirely dependent on whether or not the game decides to fuck you in the asshole. And for some unfortunate people who played this game soon after it released, had to deal with an absolutely foul bug. Remember when I said that Chica had a terrible flaw? This is the time where I get to explain that flaw to you, the viewer. Chica used to have an incredibly glaring bug, that being, you would hear Chica laugh, signaling for you to move to the other side of the office to stare at her. So you do, but as you turn to look at her, she won't be there. Moments later, Nightmare Cupcake would kill you, almost like you ignored Chica altogether, but you know you didn't, and she just didn't appear. This would happen incredibly frequently. Fun fact, it was actually this exact bug that made Dawko give up on this night and skip it. I can only imagine how incredibly frustrating it must have been for players to pour so much time into this night, get to 6 AM, only to then die because Chica decided she didn't want to work. Absolutely foul. I never had to deal with this bug, so it appears to not be a problem anymore, but let me know in the comments if you've experienced the problems with this Havoc Chica bug. If you can somehow manage to keep your sanity intact through night 8, then you can finally move on to night 9. And let me tell you, it will feel incredibly underwhelming because night 8 is so much harder. Night 9 consists of Soul Cage, Havoc Puppet, Havoc Foxy, Golden Call, Molten Evil, and Am I Real? Can you figure out why this night is easier than the previous? Yeah, you're exactly right. It's because the boa isn't there to slam your dick in a car door. I don't have much to say about this night, honestly. The voice acting of the phone call is pretty questionable, but I'll talk more about the phone calls in a while. Night 10, however, I do have something to talk about. Remember how I said one of the nights in this game is a one-on-one boss fight? Yeah, this is that night. You go up against a character you haven't seen before named Garvey. Now, since Garvey is the only animatronic on this night, you may think it's going to be easy. And while I'd say it's still easier than night 8, it's definitely not easy by any means, so get that thought out of your head right now, bucko. So I'm going to warn you ahead of time that Garvey's mechanics are not technically difficult, but you'll understand why he's such a pain in the ass as this explanation goes on. Let's get one huge problem out of the way. You're only allowed to be looking at the cameras for a specific amount of time throughout the night. The more you look at the cameras, the darker your vision gets. It's definitely slow, but once it starts to get dark, you'll totally be able to tell. Garvey can attack from 3 different locations. Think of these locations as the left, the middle, and the right. Left and right are the most straightforward. You will have to listen for Garvey's laughter. This will give you a pretty clear indication of which side he's about to attack you from. At this point, you must open up the cameras. This is the part where I should mention that there's been a vent toggle button on the cameras this whole time. I never brought it up because it hasn't ever been important up until this point. After you pull up the camera and toggle the vents, you must click on the vent of the side Garvey is coming from. This will temporarily slow him down. At this time, you must very quickly run to the other side of the office and stare at the door he'll be coming from. Beating him to the door is key. You have to be staring at the door before Garvey peeks in, which can be challenging because you need to be fast. Like, really fucking fast. It will not feel remotely fair, but as you start to learn his speed, it will get slightly easier. Which, like, no fucking shit, that's how practice works. Insane that I have to explain to you how practicing works, and yet, here we are. Now, there will come a few times where you will hear his laughter in both of your ears. At this time, all you have to do is look straight up at the ceiling. You'll be able to see him staring back at you. Keep staring until he disappears, and you'll be good to continue. Honestly, the best part of this night is that you don't have to deal with Golden Call. God fucking damn, I hate that stupid ass animatronic bitch. But if you can manage to hunker down and deal with all of the garbage for long enough, you'll be able to beat night 10. But what happens then? Well, a cutscene plays. At our desk, we will be able to see a heart on the table for some reason. As we're confused, wondering why it's there, Garvey shatters the window behind us and begins chasing us through the building. We get trapped near a door and enter one final spacebar mashing minigame. The screen cuts to black and we're shown a gravestone of a John Wright, stating brat, scum, waste of air. So, that might seem confusing to you, so I suppose it's time I explain a bit about the lore, huh? Bear with me, as this is not one of my strong suits. So that John Wright on the tombstone is us. We've been playing as John Wright, as is mentioned in the Night 1 phone call. A man by the name of Peter is the phone guy, and he's the one calling us throughout the nights. He claims he used to be a security guard at Freddy Fazbear's. On night 1, Peter explains that we're dead and in a sort of purgatory, with several monsters roaming the buildings. And these monsters are supposedly our childhood friends. The reason why we're in a Freddy Fazbear's-like location is because our mind shapes the purgatory based off of the things we've seen, which could suggest we either worked at a Fazbear's location before, or at least have a strong tie to one. Peter says we can escape this purgatory, but he needs our help. He says to grab an audio tape that should be on the desk next to the fan. This is also where we learn that there is a tape that we need to collect on each night. All tapes, aside from the first, will appear randomly on one of the cameras, and I'll get into these tapes later. On night 2, Peter explains his theories about why we're being hunted by the animatronics. He believes that someone or something tried to manifest these ghosts into physical bodies. That attempt clearly failed, which is why all of the characters look so fucked. Peter believes that because we are ghosts, we have a plasma of sorts that the animatronics need to survive, and that's why they're trying to eat us up like a gourmet steak. We don't get the next meaningful piece of information from Peter until night 5, where he tells us that Golden Call is his own physical remains. That means we've identified one of the animatronics trying to attack us, and we'll soon be able to find out who everyone else is as well, but we can cover that later. Peter tells us that the tapes we've been collecting are memories from our traumatic childhood. Peter mentions how an ominous he is also on these tapes, and I'm willing to bet that this he is Garvey. Peter thinks that collecting all of these tapes will allow our friends to move on and become regular ghosts, not being trapped in this purgatory with us anymore. On night 6, Peter explains to us that he has tapes too in his version of the purgatory, and that both his memories and ours are in one way or another tied to Freddy's locations. He says he missed a few of his tapes because you only get one attempt. The first 10 days in the purgatory decide your fate. Missing one tape is the difference between a chance at escape and spending eternity fending off your suffering dead friends stuck inside of robotic bodies. Peter begs us to collect the tapes and free everyone because he can't anymore. On night 7, Peter says the animatronic sleep cycles are all out of whack. He's been doing this for years while stuck here and was able to find a pattern with their sleep cycles. But out of nowhere, once we came here, those cycles started to change for some reason. Peter mentions he found a key and tried to use it on the exit door, but it didn't work. He says he'll update us as soon as he can. On night 8, we get some pretty crucial information. Peter has found another key, and he believes something may happen soon. He says we probably don't have any keys in our purgatory because he thinks the keys are linked to a specific trauma he suffered. He also thinks he knows why the animatronic sleep cycles are messed up. Apparently, we brought something into this world, and it's big, with loud footsteps causing the characters to wake up when they're not supposed to. Peter says that if this thing we brought in is what he thinks it is, that we're all sorts of fucked. And of course, knowing what we already know, we can take a pretty good guess at who that might be. Night 9 is where we get to hear Peter's final moments. The monster we let enter this world is exactly who Peter thought it was. Garvey. Garvey has been tearing all of the monsters in Peter's purgatory into pieces. Peter knows that we apparently know who Garvey is. He tells us he's hiding behind the curtains where Foxy is, and that Garvey is coming for him. He tells us to get the keys, and the call ends. The 2 keys he's mentioned can be found. The first on night 10 in the same location where you find the tape on camera 5. The second key requires me to tell you about a night I have yet to mention, night 11, aka Nightmare. No matter how good you are at FNAF games, nothing will prepare you for just how surprisingly difficult this night really is. They cranked the AI for these characters on this night up to 10,000. Holy shit, it's insane. From 10 a.m. to 5 a.m., you go up against Havoc Freddy, Havoc Chica, Havoc Foxy, Havoc Puppet, Golden Call, The Boa, Soul Cage, and Molten Evil all at the same time. This has to be one of the most stressful challenges I've ever attempted. It is ridiculous. The sheer speed you have to even get close to beating this night is ridiculous. You quite literally have no time to rest for even a second. There is constantly something happening, and it's enough to give any grown adult a seizure and kill them instantly. But that's not even the worst part, no. The worst part comes at 5 a.m., when Garvey comes and kills everyone, and you're yet again thrown into a final, even more difficult Garvey boss fight for the last 2 hours of the night. If you thought he was quick before, boy, you better be Usain Bolt, because you need to be doubling your speed. It is insane how fast you really have to be if you want to be able to complete this night. But if you can manage to beat this night while grabbing the second key that's on camera 8, congrats! You're almost ready to achieve the good ending. There are a few prerequisites required to get the good ending. The first is getting the 2 keys. Check. The second is collecting all of the tapes. Check. The third is beating night 11. Check. The fourth is listening to the 10th tape. Come to think of it, we actually haven't dove into the tapes yet, so we'll do that now. But here's that warning I mentioned at the beginning of the video. The topics that take place in these tapes are highly disturbing and are one of the main reasons why this game is so controversial. Viewer discretion is heavily advised. The 10 tapes you collect throughout Dormitibus tell the story of Garvey Wright, John Wright's, our character's, brother. The tapes go over Garvey's plan to murder several children and stuff them into the suits in his father's establishment. There's another minigame you can play in Dormitibus called Cardboard Theater, where you play as Garvey and live out a few of the scenarios mentioned in these tapes. Not only did Garvey murder several children, he also murdered his brother Peter. Yes, the same Peter who was calling us throughout the game. In the Cardboard Theater, we get to watch the spring lock failure happen to Garvey before he has the chance to kill John and leave no witnesses. Garvey's father soon sells the Cake Bear establishments because of the controversy, and it gets bought and turned into what we now know as Freddy Fazbear's. John gets a job at the Fazbear Fright location from Five Nights at Freddy's 3 and goes head-to-head with his brother, who in this game's story basically took William Afton's place as Springtrap. And as you know if you've played FNAF 3, John burns the building down and kills himself as well. After his death is where Dormitibus takes place. By collecting the tapes, collecting the keys, and beating Cardboard Theater, John is able to send Garvey to hell while setting the rest of the spirits of his dead friends and brother free. Dxtr, that sounds pretty normal for a FNAF-style game, I hear you saying. Why did you tell me that viewer discretion was advised? Well, that's because of the contents of Tape 3, and a specific news clipping that you see near the end of the game. In Cardboard Theater, you will need to recollect the 2 keys you collected before while playing. At the end of this minigame, Cake Bears will be unlocked, acting as the final 12th night of Dormitibus. The only 2 characters present in this night are Cake Bear and Havoc Puppet. I won't spend too much time explaining this night since you only ever have to beat it once. Cake Bear will move around the map and make it to your desk. You can stall him by lighting the candle on his cake, but I'm not sure if I'd actually do that because it drains power. Once he gets super close to your desk, quickly pull up the camera and he should go away. Havoc Puppet can appear randomly on any camera and will block your view. Since watching Cake Bear is essential, you'll want to get rid of the puppet. Simply staring at the puppet will cause it to go away, but sitting in the cameras will cause the battery to drain incredibly quickly, so it's best to wait until the battery is fully charged before dealing with him. If the battery goes dead, Havoc Puppet will disable it, which will lead to an inevitable death to Cake Bear. After beating Night 12, you'll be greeted to the FNAF 4 box. You must use the 2 keys you've collected to open it, and several news clippings will be given to you, each detailing the gruesome murders of some of the children at the hands of Garvey. But I'll cover them in just a moment. Back to the tapes. I referenced Tape 3 being the most alarming of all of them. Rather than explain it to you, I'll just play it.
My God! This is most certainly beginning to be fun. There's this hot 15-year-old that was part of the kids' friends group. You know, it was fun. She screamed, but nobody heard her. It was so much fun. She's in one of the suits now. Just a little more time until Fredbear's is going down as well. But hey, I'll find my ways to catch her at the others.
You may have a good idea as to what Garvey is referencing doing in this tape, but if you need any clarification, one of the news clippings will confirm your suspicions. It reads, "The Fredbear's establishment in town was recently closed because of an accident with the animatronical characters. The CEO is now selling the franchise just like the previous owner did. The dirt that has been shed onto the establishment increased even more, as the police found the remains of a 15-year-old female in the back of the establishment, stuffed into a suit. She was supposedly raped to death by a yet unknown killer. Connections to the incident at the previous establishment are already being drawn." This clipping right here, mixed with the excitement in the voice of Garvey in Tape 3, is the sole reason why this game is so hated and is so disgusting. Almost everybody agrees that throwing rape into this story was completely unnecessary. Some may argue that depraved people will do depraved things like this, and it's odd to not acknowledge that terrible things like this really happen. And to a point, I understand your thought process. But to feel the need to add it to a game that will most definitely be played by children with no prior warning is insane. And it gets even worse when you dive into the person who made the decision to put this into the story, Blackout. Blackout has since left the internet, but a while after Dormitibus released, One of the members of the Radiance team, responsible for games such as Treasure Island and Five Nights at Chuck E. Cheese Rebooted, posted an unlisted YouTube video going over Blackout's messages of harassment towards them. Soon after that video followed a Google document surfacing regarding Blackout's behavior, regarding joking about raping people, being hateful towards trans people, and a laundry list of other terrible things. But the most egregious thing that Blackout has done was the Discord messages that were released revealing him to have been grooming a 12-year-old girl, making jokes about Germany's lax age of consent laws, and at one point even sending nudes to this child, this 12-year-old girl. After all of this unfolded, Blackout went on a hate brigade full of harassment and eventually left the internet, thanking his supporters that he for some reason thought he had. Now going to his Game Jolt page reads one message. Jesus Christ, just leave me be. I don't want to live in your heads rent-free. I've moved on, and you should as well. Bye. And with that, that's where the story of Dormitibus ends. A game that could have been something amazing, with a story that was really promising, soiled and ruined by a disgusting, perverted pedophile. Again, I encourage everyone to try their best to separate the art from the artist, but if you can't do that, then I'd recommend checking out the remake of Dormitibus that was made by some very talented creators if you're still interested in seeing what this game has to offer, minus all of the disgusting and unnecessary perversions. What's the best Five Nights at Freddy's fan game ever made? I think there's a few answers that could really give a valid argument. Maybe you think it's One Night at Flumpty's. Maybe you think Pop Goes. Or maybe... Maybe you're super wrong and think Five Nights at Candy's too. God, I fucking hate that stupid game so much. It's so goddamn boring and repetitive. I'd rather stick my dick in a toaster than play it. But hey, that's probably a video for another day. I should mention that the title of this video says the best FNAF fan game, but what that really means is from a gameplay standpoint. How fun is it to actually play? Maybe after hearing that, your answer has changed. The game we'll be covering in this video is, in my opinion, the best FNAF fan game from a gameplay standpoint that has ever been made, The Joy of Creation, Storyborn. Fun fact, Markiplier also agrees with me on this point.
I'm not even lying about that. This was amazing. This is by far the best Five Nights at Freddy's fan game ever made, just from a gameplay standpoint. And I'm only speaking from a gameplay standpoint.
So yeah, Markiplier and I are basically best friends. Mark, if you're watching, best friend, leave a comment that just says, "Peep." That way everyone will know that we are canonically best friends. Thanks, my boy. Before we begin, I'd like to greatly apologize for my lack of videos in the last 2, probably 3 weeks as of the time of this going up. I just got done moving to a new city and starting my new full-time job, so I have not had any free time. But I'm finally back in the groove, and I have a set work schedule that won't change, so expect uploads to be more frequent now. I plan on releasing 1 video a week on the White channel. Don't quote me on that, but I will definitely try my best to keep it up. Also, big news, we have a community Discord server now. Hooray! A while back I asked you guys in a community post if you wanted a Discord server, and the majority of you said yes. So I hunkered down and actually got one created. It probably isn't the best, but with your guys' suggestions, I'm sure we can make it a place where we all want to hang out and chat with each other. You can join using the link in the description. In the last video, I asked you all what your favorite monster from the web of cogs and oil was. My favorite comment was this one by Ads the Flareon. They chose the corpse, and while my favorite is the Trickster, I really like the thought process behind this answer. Flareon says that they're so desensitized to animatronics that the machine isn't even on the table for favorite. They go on to say how out of place the corpse feels and how that alone makes it the creepiest. Jesus, would he just get to the topic of the video already? Yap, 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 that's all this bozo does. Listen, I hear you. You don't need to be a dick. Let's get to the video. The Joy of Creation story mode is, as I'm sure you already know, not the first game in the Joy of Creation series, but let's all be honest with each other, it's easily the first one that's actually enjoyable to play. The original Joy of Creation might actually be the most boring experience of all time. It consisted of you sitting in a chair, spinning in a circle, and flashing your flashlight at everything you see for an infinite amount of time. That's right, there wasn't even a time system. Story mode, however, is absolutely amazing, so let's get into it. The game opens with a cutscene. We play as an adult named Nick Cawthon. Recognize that last name? Well, you should, and don't worry, I'll be talking about it in a bit. Nick walks up to an old house in the middle of the woods and recounts how long it's been since he's last been there, insinuating that something terrible happened inside before. We get a flashback detailing the start of what happened, and we're shifted into the point of view of a new character named Michael. Michael wakes up in a basement. We find out it is in fact not Michael's basement, and is instead Scott Cawthon's? What the fuck? Regardless, Scott asks Michael what he's doing in their house. Michael states that he doesn't know, and a child version of Nick convinces Scott and Val, who is Scott's wife, to let Michael stay the night at their house. Absolutely, positively, possibly one of the worst plays I've ever witnessed in my whole entire life. You found a guy in your basement, talked to him for 3 minutes, got a solid 0 answers from him, and allowed him to stay in your house overnight while your wife and child are inside. Absolutely brilliant. This is when we enter the first, what the game calls, memories. I can't call them nights since all of the challenges we will play through actually happen at pretty much the exact same time. For memory 1, we are in a bedroom in a crib, where we play as Nick again, this time as a child. We wake up in the middle of the night during a thunderstorm, and Michael starts talking through Nick's baby monitor, effectively acting as the phone guy of this memory. Michael explains to Nick that there are monsters trying to get him, and explains in detail how to fend them all off, explaining that at 6 a.m., the monsters will all go away, and we're thrown into the first challenge. Unlike in most FNAF games where you slowly are introduced to each animatronic throughout the nights, adding more and more stress as it goes on, Story Mode opts to do something different. Story Mode throws essentially every animatronic on your nuts all at once. This memory has Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy in it. I'll now go over all of their mechanics. Before I dive into the character mechanics, I'll start by mentioning the lamp. Behind you there is a lamp. By turning it on, you calm yourself down. Having the lamp off for too long will lead to you having intense visual and auditory hallucinations before inevitably losing the run. Now, I'll start with Chica since she's by far the easiest to deal with. Chica comes from your closet. There will be a noticeable audio cue when she opens the closet door. When she does, you'll have to turn off your lamp and wait for her to go back into the closet. Personally, I didn't know Chica swang that way, but I think it's pretty sick. Next, I'll go over Bonnie. Bonnie comes from your bedroom door. He will make a notable audio cue like Chica. He will knock on the door 3 times. When you hear this, you'll need to be quick, because you only have so long to react. When you hear the knocks, you'll have to quickly shut your lamp off and lay down in your crib. I should mention that laying down is a mechanic, and if you lay down while Chica's in your room, she'll kill you. After laying down in bed, Bonnie will slam your door open, look around, and then leave the room again, which tells you that it's safe to get back up and turn your lamp back on. Bonnie has this really weird mechanic. I'm not sure if it's a bug or if it's intended. However, a lot of the time, I'd say about 50% at least, when you hear Bonnie knock, he'll never end up coming into the room, which caused me on multiple occasions to shut the lamp off and lay down, only for the sound of Bonnie coming into the room to never play, meaning I end up laying down for way longer than I should, which pretty obviously fucks me over. Next, we'll talk about Freddy. Freddy appears at the window next to your crib. When he does, all you need to do is close the curtains to prevent him from seeing you. After a few moments, you'll hear a quiet sound cue letting you know he's left, and it's free to open your curtains again. But what if you hear Bonnie knocking or Chica coming in while you're holding off Freddy? Well, I'll tell you, you'll just get bread in the butt. So when you shart Bonnie's jizz on the toilet after being bread in the butt, we can talk about Foxy. Oh my god, Foxy. Foxy is under your bed like your weird uncle. Occasionally, you'll hear him scratching his hook on your bedpost. Well, at least, that's what Michael says that he's doing. I personally subscribe to the belief that he's scratching his hook on his big fat stupid balls. When you hear him doing this, you know that he will soon be attacking. A while after the sound cue, you will be able to see Foxy's hook on the back of your bed. When you do, you know you don't have much time left until he attacks, so quickly turn off your lamp, lay down, and close your eyes. Oh yeah, forgot to mention you can close your eyes while laying down. It's just used for Foxy, which is why I didn't say anything. Repeat this ass cycle enough times, and congrats, you've beaten the first memory. Only 4 more left to go. The second memory takes place in the living room of the house. In this memory, you play as Scott's wife, Val. We start with a cutscene where Scott tells Val that he's going to make sure Nick is okay, since both of them are pretty uncomfortable with Michael staying in the house, which bodes the question, why the fuck did you even let him in? Regardless, Scott leaves and Val is left alone. This game mode is honestly probably my favorite. I personally feel it is the most terrifying out of the rest. In this memory, rather than being confined to one area like normal FNAF games, you're freely able to move around. Just like in the last memory, you have to survive until 6 AM against all 4 main animatronics. Michael tells us that we're fucked and to just hide. Thanks, Michael. Very helpful. Since Michael was no fucking help at all, allow me to explain what it is you're supposed to do on this night. Let's start with Foxy and Freddy. These two act identical to one another. Each come down the hallway on one side of the living room. You can check how far away they are by turning the TV on while watching their cameras. Yeah, for some reason Foxy and Freddy have cameras mounted on their faces or something. I'm not really sure, but we don't question it. You can stall one of them at a time by holding down a button. Somehow. I don't really know, guys. I really like this memory, but this part actually makes no sense. Please bear with me. Get it? Bear. Like Freddy. Like Freddy, because Freddy's like Freddy Fazbear. Like he's a bear. Bear with me. Do you get it, guys? Guys, do you get because he's like a bear? You'll notice that Foxy and Freddy both move at the same speed. So if you don't begin stalling one of them, they will reach your room at the same time, which will mean immediate death for you. How do you keep them out? I hear you asking. Well, guess what? You don't. That's right. The animatronics in this night will literally enter the room you are in and try and find you, so you'll need to hide from them when they open the door. The way you hide from Foxy and Freddy is by hiding right next to the door that they'll be opening. The only problem with this is that when you're standing next to one door, you're right in the line of sight for the other, meaning that if you're hiding from Freddy and Foxy opens the door, he'll see you and promptly kill you. This is why stalling one of them is super important, as you'll be able to control and create a pattern at which they will come to the doors. Now let's talk about Bonnie. Along with the 2 doors that Foxy and Freddy come from, there are also double doors to the living room as well. I really have no idea why there are so many entrances to the living room. This house is a fucking maze. Bonnie doesn't have a camera, so you can't watch him directly. Instead, you'll have to walk over to the double doors and look through the keyhole to see how close he is. Once he gets close enough that you'll be able to smell the grease on his fuzzy nutsack, you just have to hide on either side of the double door and wait for Bonnie to arrive and close the door. Which brings yet another issue. When you're hiding from Bonnie, whichever side of the door you're on will leave you vulnerable to either Freddy or Foxy, so you'll really have to balance and know where Foxy and Freddy are at all times. It's the reason why I really like this memory. I really like micromanagement in games that are both hard but fair. This is why I think 1020 mode in FNAF 2 is such bullshit, because it's actually just not fair, especially Toy Bonnie. Toy Bonnie is the reason why it took me 14 hours to complete that stupid fucking mode. If you want me to make a video talking in detail about why I hate that mode specifically, let me know in the comments below. With Bonnie, Freddy, and Foxy being gone over, the only character left to talk about is Chica. Chica is easily the weakest character in this night, very similar to last night. Chica will randomly appear next to one of the windows in the living room. You'll be able to tell because she starts growling? What? She's a fucking chicken. Why would she growl? Whatever, that doesn't matter. When she does, you'll have to get up from the couch. I should have probably mentioned that when you look at the TV to check on Freddy and Foxy, you have to sit down on the couch. I didn't think it was important when I was writing that part of the script, but I just remembered while writing this part, and I'm honestly way too lazy to go back and edit that part of the video to add one sentence. So instead, I opted to add in a whole nother section just to explain why I didn't explain that part of the game before, arguably padding for runtime, even though this video would have been well over 15 minutes without it. Hopefully you enjoyed this section of Dxtr Over Explains. Anyway, when you hear Chica growling, you'll have to stand up from the couch and not move until you hear the growling stop. Once you do, you're free to move again. If you move, Chica will jump scare you, which actually doesn't kill you until the final hour. Instead, it will just send you back to the couch and you won't be able to check the cameras for a while. Chica is easily the weakest part of this memory, as previously stated. She just feels so shallow compared to the other three. I know the other three all do the exact same thing, but they do so in a way that feels interesting. They do so in unison, as even though they do the same thing, they all work together in a way that keeps up the intensity all night. Chica just feels so out of place. After 6 a.m., this memory is over and we can move on to the next one. The next memory takes place in the office where you play as Scott Cawthon himself. This memory starts with Scott going to check on Nick, but of course, we both know what Nick and Val are going through at the moment. Now it's Scott's turn. Scott sees Freddy and starts running. I'm talking haul assin'. His house starts going batshit crazy and Scott hides in his office. He listens to a tape he left himself on how to defeat the animatronics that he made. I try to wrap my head around this section and the lore implications behind why he was leaving himself recordings, but I'm honestly too tired and way more focused on the gameplay in this game. This night is okay, I guess. It's interesting at the least, and it's very clearly just a large improvement from the first Joy of Creation game. Instead of just spinning in a circle and flashing your light when you find animatronics, you actually instead have to actively search for each animatronic. Let's start with Freddy, since he's both the easiest to deal with and the weirdest overall. Freddy can appear in any of the 4 entrances to the office: the front door, the window, the other window, and the closet. Just like the living room, this memory is free roam, so you'll move around to find the animatronics. When you find Freddy, just flash him with your flashlight and he'll leave. Something very interesting about Freddy that I should note: if left unanswered, Freddy will not kill you throughout the memory. Rather, he acts as a check for the end of it. If you reach 6 a.m. and Freddy is in one of the locations where you could find him, he'll kill you, so you have to make sure that you're really on top of him. I'll talk about Foxy next. On your desk you'll find 3 monitors with cameras. It's been so long, really starting to feel like classic FNAF now. You can look through the cameras on these monitors to find Foxy. When you do, all you have to do is look at him on said cameras. Eventually he'll have a seizure and leave. That's it, pretty simple. But of course, the characters in this game tend to like to work together to make your life more difficult. So that brings me to Bonnie. You can also find Bonnie on the cameras. However, if you see Bonnie on the cameras, make sure not to look at him directly. If you do, he'll punch the shit out of your camera, and you'll no longer be able to look at it for the rest of the memory. Instead, you have to go to the location corresponding to which camera you saw him on, and flash him with your light to make him go away. Now we can talk about Chica, who, unlike the last 2 memories, is actually my favorite. So, there's this giant fucking hole in the wall of your office. I don't know why. You also don't know why, so we won't question it. Chica will try to fit her big fat hairy ass through it slowly, and I do mean slowly. Slow as fuck. So slow. Once she begins to wriggle and writhe in your hole, pause. Once she begins to shake on your hole, pause. Fuck. Once she begins to force herself through your hole, pause. God damn it. You know what? Once she starts to move, you have to get up and find 3 cupcakes hidden around your room. Once you do, she'll leave. These cupcakes can be hidden in drawers, behind posters, and my favorite, in the fucking garbage. Since it may take you a bit of time to find these cupcakes while working on dealing with the other animatronics, if you look at Chica, she will stop moving, giving you more time to look for the cupcakes. Congrats, you little stinker. Once you hit 6 a.m., if Freddy is gone, you're free to move on to Memory 4. Memory 4 is by far the most different and intuitive. I will say I'm not super sure how it works, so I'm sorry if my explanation is god-awful. In fact, since I'm so nervous I'll be god-awful, I'll let my best friend Markiplier that I mentioned earlier take it away. It's totally gonna be him giving a detailed explanation of this memory, and totally not just me doing a montage edit of his playthrough of this memory with a little bit of commentary. Mark, please don't copyright this, we're best friends.
My name is Markiplier. It's time to go into the basement. Whoa.
Kids! Are any of you there? I found your note. Daddy's here. You must be really scared, but I'm here. I created you. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica. Foxy? How is this happening? What are you? What are you?
Ow! Ah, good. Yes, you put me in the shitty toilet. Oh, good. Thank you for that. Why is this in my basement? Oh, okay. All right, then. Am I not going to get any information about this one? Am I just going to be left to my own devices? There seems to be a lot of 6 on the walls here. Oh, hi! Hello? Who are you? Yeah, I gotta get through the door. I'm gonna try to sneak over to the bathroom again. Why did I come in here? I didn't need to come in here. Oh! Ah! We come from the fire! I need a cupcake, I need a triangle, I need a swirkly-doo, I need a roll. I don't know what any of those are. Ah! I am in the furnace! There must be like... Oh, what the fuck? Okay, I got a hook. Oh, okay, that's in the furnace now. Well, that's good to know. Okay. No? Alright then. Yee, okay. Nope, you're still there. Okay, that's a problem. Yeah, I'm right there. Okay, got it. It's gone quiet. What? How does that make sense? You got 4 more to go, and that one took a while. Many shapes, all similar, but different. Oh, it's a code thing, isn't it? Alright. Ah, wait, okay, the numbers coincide with the number of creatures. 9632. I'm not sure I'm too happy about this, but there we go. So, Wait! Okay! Oh boy, oh, hi, okay. Doop. Be-doop. Be-doop. Oh, that's not good. Oh god, it's a code. Of course it's over there. I don't know the code for this one. Bonnie with 4. So Freddy had 3. Bonnie 4. Foxy 2. As it leaves Chica with 1, right? Oh, I see. Okay. They're colored. Okay. Chica first. Foxy second. Ooh. What? Okay. Oh. Oh, I can close it behind me. Alrighty then. Got the key. I don't know! Okay, where am I now? Oh. Pressing forward because I got nothing better to do and I have a funny feeling I'm gonna die. Okay, that's... keep going. Okay, don't look back. I'm not gonna look back. Why would I look back? Okay, I looked back and I don't know what that did, but I did it! Ah! Ah! That's why you don't stupidly look back. Alright, number 2! Oh, that was number 3! Oh, we posed, we played, we stopped, we stared, we screamed. Hi, Golden Freddy! Oh, he remains. Oh! What do I do about this? Oh, hi! What the fuck? Oh, hi. Oh my god, okay. Holy shit, I saw that move, man! Ooh! Oh, no door! Oh, we're in no door land. I got a bad feeling about this. Oh, everything's gone. Excuse me. Hello. Oh, it's his computer. Hey! I made it! Simple tricks of the mind or something more sinister? I don't know. I don't know what that means! Bye-bye!
Wasn't that sick? Thank you, Markiplier. Truly my best friend of all time. Finally, it's time to talk about the final memory of this game, which takes place in the attic. In this memory, you play as Scott again. Michael beats your shit up and ties you to a chair in the attic. He tells you that you're gonna burn and die, because fire in Five Nights at Freddy's is like beans on toast to British people. I don't know if I'd call them people though. Gonna be real, don't really give a shit what Michael has to say. I'm much more concerned about the fire in my goddamn house. In this night, you go up against 2 endoskeletons, Golden Freddy, and The Creation. Oh my god, Creation! Like the joy of creation, that's the name of the game. Isn't that so cool? Oh, that's so fucking cool. I'm gonna scrub my nuts on a cactus. Anyway, The Creation is the coolest part of this memory, so I'll cover it last. Let's start with the poopy ass Golden Freddy. Unlike other memories, surviving isn't enough to complete it. Instead, you actively have a task to complete. In this case, you have to find Golden Freddy on your cameras 12 times and shock him. Once you do, you finish the memory. Sounds pretty easy, doesn't it? Wrong, you fucking idiot, it's actually pretty bullshit. Wanna know why? Because of the creation. But I'll get to the poopy ass creation in a minute. First I have to talk about the stupid bumbling endoskeletons. So as I was double checking their mechanics, I learned that the endoskeletons are actually called the Fallen. Pretty cool, I suppose, and typing the Fallen is way easier than typing endoskeletons over and over again, so that's what I'll be calling them. In your cameras, you can switch from the house cameras to the attic cameras. It's on these attic cameras where you can see the Fallen. Inside of the attic, there are 2 large doors. Each Fallen will come from one of these doors. When you hear their enormous fat asses trampling down the hall, just make sure you close the door on the correct side of your attic to not have your ass blasted. I should also mention that Golden Freddy can appear in your office all transparent like. I don't really know what happens if he does this, as every time I saw him I quickly looked away out of habit from FNAF 2. Now we can get to Poop Dog, aka the creation. The creation will start in the basement of your house. As the memory progresses, the creation will make his way through the house and to the attic where you are. Now, I know just by looking at him, you may be thinking, God damn, that robot is really hot. And I agree. However, this is not the character you're going to want to rule 30 for you. He'll bend you like a contortionist, but we both know full well that you can't bend like that, so you'd probably just end up dying. On your cameras, you'll see these 4 markers that represent doors or barriers. As the creation moves, he will break his way through these barriers in an attempt to get to you. You can use your shock to send him back a phase in the cameras, but this brings up an issue. Your shock has a painfully slow recharge time, and if you flash the creation, then you won't be able to flash Golden Freddy to win. Finding the perfect balance between flashing these 2 is key to defeating this memory. Once you've found and flashed the 12th and final Golden Freddy, the attic memory will be completed. As far as gameplay goes, that's where the Joy of Creation story mode comes to a close. There's multiple other things along with an enormous timeline to dissect, but I'd rather die. I like talking about how the game plays, and in that case, Joy of Creation story mode is top notch. Every single memory plays completely differently, and I think this is the main reason why it's so good. With other fan games, and even the originals themselves, you quickly understand what you need to do and can then begin to come up with strategies that allow you to not use certain intended parts of the game. For example, FNAF 2. In FNAF 2, there are a lot of cameras. Like, a lot. However, you only ever need to use 1. That's not very interesting when you think about it. You actually have no good reason to ever look at any of the other cameras in the game because the music box is all that matters. Same goes with FNAF 1. The only cameras you have to look at are the right corner cameras to make sure Freddy stays put, and occasionally you'll have to check on Foxy, but if you're playing correctly, you don't even have to look at Foxy in order to win. The Joy of Creation story mode switches up the gameplay loop every night. None of the nights are terribly complex, leaving out the attic, but since you have to learn something new each night, that's not something I have a problem with. I think if you were to take one of these memories from this game and turn it into a standalone game, I wouldn't like the game very much, because repeating formulas just isn't fun in any game. Don't keep repeating yourself, or if you do, make sure that it's repeated in a way that's interesting. For example, Undertale. While that whole game is based around an RPG battle mechanic, every enemy has unique and different attack patterns to learn, and just when you get bored of dodging projectiles, the game switches it up and changes the mechanics and physics of the heart you play as. It's brilliant, and so is this game. I think if more FNAF devs took inspiration for how this game plays out, overall, we would have a lot more fan games that stand out and are fresh and exciting.
Five Nights at Freddy's games don't scare me. Even the jump scares never typically get me to scream, shout, quiver in my boots, and defecate in my britches. However, the game I'll be covering today did. Not only that, but this game, this masterpiece, is probably one of, if not the coolest Five Nights at Freddy's fan game I've ever played. Today, I'll be covering The Return to Bloody Nights. Released in 2023 on Game Jolt by Kazovsky, it serves as a prequel to the official Five Nights at Freddy's series, taking place before the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 2. So you already know this game is about to be packed to the brim with lore, and after hearing that, I really begin to quiver in fear, because covering lore makes me want to drop cheeks on my desk and quake my entire house. I personally care much more about gameplay. Can't enjoy the story if the game itself is worse than shitting in a public school bathroom. So let's jump right into The Return to Bloody Nights. I'm sure I won't lose my mind, even a little bit. Starting up the game, we're greeted to an opening cutscene, where we can see Spring Bonnie playing a tune and getting his jiggy on. We appear to be inside a Freddy costume, and given when this game is taking place, I can only assume that this is either a Golden Freddy suit or a Fredbear suit. Looking around in the suit, I noticed literally Satan chilling in the darkness. Sup, Satan? And shortly thereafter, we're thrown into the menu. The Return to Bloody Nights has the typical Five Nights formula, with a difficult sixth night at the end. Split up into days of the week, it gives it a bit more character, which also makes sense. When a girl asks you what day it is, you don't say the fourth day, you say Thursday like a normal person. But all you little freak geeks probably respond by instantly jeebing in your pants because a woman has never spoken to you before because you're chronically online. Don't lie. We all are. Nothing to be embarrassed about. Jumping into night one, we first have to wait for a phone call to play out between Henry and William. Since this takes place before the official games, it can only be assumed that at this point in time, Henry already had his restaurant, and William was currently working on his own. Before every night, we get a phone call just like this. Henry checks up on William's progress with the animatronics. William talks and makes me incredibly uncomfortable. Seriously, the voice actors in this game did an amazing job of playing the parts. Oh, and I can't forget my favorite part, getting to hear Henry tell William that safety comes first about 800 times per phone call.
I want to make sure that our establishments are safe for everyone who comes through our doors. I still want you to take your time with the project. Rushing things could lead to mistakes.
But I do need to move quickly if we're going to open in time.
I know, but please keep safety in mind, above all else.
Honestly, if I was William and I had to hear Henry tell me the same thing a million times, I probably would have killed those kids too. Moving into the office, we get to listen to yet another phone call. Holy shit, I'm gonna tear my pubes out. I know this game is more focused on lore, but holy shit, I downloaded the game to play it. If I wanted a story, I'd get a visual novel. In all honesty though, the in-office phone calls are actually also great. Again, the voice actor did an amazing job playing the part. He tells us about the restaurant, whatever the fuck. Tell me about the robots, bro. That's what I'm interested in. Night 1 introduces Spring Bonnie. I'm sure you could have guessed. This game takes place in Fredbear's family diner. We play as a guy named Scott, which I might add is probably the whitest name of all time. Spring Bonnie does exactly what you think he does. Starts on the show stage, shimmies around the cameras like he just sprayed some cologne in the air, and brings it around town to your right side office door. It's at this point where I should establish how the doors work in this game. You'll notice that there are no lights. However, you do have a flashlight, so you can flash that puppy into the doorways to see what's there. However, you'll notice that your flashlight doesn't illuminate the entire doorway, so you'll have to move your flashlight around to actually see the full picture. It's also because of this that we get my favorite part of this entire game. Oh my fucking god! Holy shit! Oh my god, that was fucking cool as shit! Oh my god, bro. Holy shit, that was awesome. The moment I saw this, I thought to myself, yep, for sure. This game's getting a white video. The fear in my voice in that clip was genuine. I know a lot of creators on this site like to fake and hype up their reactions because it makes good content, but if you watch my second channel, Dxtr Black, you'd know that all of my reactions are real. So not often will you catch me getting scared like that, but hot damn was this cool. As I'm sure you could guess, when you see Spring Bonnie in the doorway geeked out of his mind, you need to close the door and wait for a sound cue letting you know he's left. With only one animatronic, I'm sure you could guess that this night is incredibly easy, so let's move on to night 2. Night 2 introduces Fredbear. He acts the same way as Spring Bonnie, except he attacks the left door rather than the right. Since that's pretty boring, let's talk about the cameras and why I think this game does animatronic movement correctly compared to other games. Something I've noticed in a lot of FNAF games is that characters have a path. No shit, that's how it's always been. But you'll notice in most games that this path is very basic. For example, I move from camera 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and then arrive at your door. Very basic. This game and a few others do something really cool. Rather than just appearing in one camera and teleporting to another, the characters in the Return to Bloody Nights will instead have multiple phases on each camera, kind of like Foxy from Five Nights at Freddy's 1, wherein, if you're watching the cameras, you will see Spring Bonnie, for example, go from the show stage to standing off of the show stage, and then he'll transfer to another camera, and in most cases, each character has at least 2 phases on each camera that they enter, which really gives a feeling of realism to the game, as it seems like you actually get to see the characters walking around rather than just teleporting from camera to camera like most Five Nights at Freddy's games. Another game that pulls this off really well is A Bite at Freddy's, a FNAF fan game I've covered on this channel, and you can watch my review of it after you finish this one. It's a fantastic video if I do say so myself, which I do. Anyways, on to Wednesday, which introduces 3 new threats, those threats being, hold on a second, 3 new threats in one night? Did I read that right? Hold on, let me check. Oh my god. Yeah, that's right. 3 new animatronics become active on this night. God damn. Talk about going from 1 to 100 in a fraction of a second, good lord. Well, let's start going over them, shall we? Starting with the least infuriating of the 3, we have the puppet. An area of your office I have yet to mention is the prize corner, which is directly behind you. Here you will be able to see prizes. Who would have thought? This is also where you can see a bunch of fun references like Sonic, FNAF, Cuphead, and a bunch more. I had a lot of fun pointing out as many references as I could while playing, which you can see in my full playthrough on my second channel, Dxtr Black. The puppet has a chance to appear at any time throughout the night behind you in the prize corner. It doesn't move through the cameras, so there's no way to predict when it's going to attack. However, thankfully it does play a sound cue that lets you know it has appeared behind you, telling you to get off that computer call and kiss it on its hot mouth. When you hear this bell jingling sound cue, you have to quickly whip around and find it in one of 3 locations with your flashlight. Once you find it, it'll quickly hide away like a bitch and you're free to continue. The puppet is really never a problem throughout the nights, acting more of an annoying distraction than a real threat. But now, I get the misfortune of talking about the other 2 threats that this night places in my anus. So let's cover the spawn camping dickhead Fredbear 2.0. Fredbear 2.0 doesn't appear on the cameras. Instead, he appears right outside of your right door. That's where he starts. Yeah, he begins the night already outside of your door. And that's the furthest away he'll ever get from you. Isn't that just the worst thing you've ever heard in your life? I think I'd rather be diagnosed with butthole cancer. Fredbear 2.0 has multiple phases before his actual attack. You'll have to constantly flash your light in the left doorway to check his progress, which takes your attention away from a crucial character you need to watch on the cameras, whom I will talk about in a moment. As he gets closer and closer, you'll get to hear him talking right in your fucking ear, which is a pain in the ass because I'm trying to listen for movements and bell jingling at the same time. So I'd really appreciate it if you'd hop off my cock. When Fredbear 2.0 gets to your door, he will crouch down to try to get in. Which, by the way, looks crazy cool. I love animations like this in FNAF games. It adds so much life to them. Something you'll notice about Fredbear 2.0 in comparison to the other animatronics that attack your doors is that he appears to linger at them for much longer than the others. You wouldn't be crazy for thinking that either, because he does. When Fredbear 2.0 crouches down, he won't instantly enter your office like Fredbear and Spring Bonnie do. Instead, he'll wait about 8 seconds before actually attacking you, giving you time to check on the puppet and Mr. Dickhole, who I'll be covering next. That may sound like a nice gesture. Aw, he's giving me time to worry about my other problems. What an emotionally intelligent guy. No, this guy is a dick. Something I should mention is that there is no power system. However, there is generator heat. What causes the generator to go up? That's right, using your doors. No matter how much you think you're going to be able to consistently time out when Fredbear 2.0 is going to attack, I promise you that you'll get it wrong a few times. And because you know that you're going to get it wrong, you'll probably feel inclined to play it safe and close it sooner than you technically need to. And this is where he gets you. Because even if you close the door early, his timer still has to count all the way down before he attacks, leaving you with your generator heat increasing while that dickhead just stands there like a dunce for half a century. On later nights, you'll be getting attacked pretty frequently, so having this guy waste even a few seconds with your door closed can be the cause of a run to end later down the line. Alright, I can't put it off any longer. I need to talk about the most infuriating character in this entire game. Spring Bonnie 2.0. Spring Bonnie 2.0 acts much like the original, slowly creeping his way through your cameras until he can reach your office. But there's something interesting to note about him. While he's on the cameras, you can see that he's covering his face often, almost like he's playing hide and seek. And the reason for that? It's because he literally is playing hide and seek. When his robot AI was being designed, they made a hide and seek function that was meant to be used to play with the kids, but instead it's being used to play with my ass like a bongo drum. That doesn't sound too bad, Dexter. I think you're overreacting. No. Bullshit. No, I'm not. Unlike Spring Bonnie, Spring Bitch 2.0 doesn't appear in your doorway. Instead, he'll just pile drive in. So the key is to watch the final camera he appears on. He has 3 phases in this long hallway, the final of which has him close up and personal to the camera. Once you see him there, he will run out of frame, and you need to quickly close the right door before he busts in and then busts in you. Wait! Before you type in the comments how I'm bad and that this isn't a hard mechanic at all, ooh, it's basically just Foxy, Dexter, you little bitch boy. Shut the hell up. That's what I thought at first too. However, there's one tiny little tweak that makes him worse than a hangnail that just keeps peeling your skin back the longer you pull on it. Unlike Foxy, who, when you look at him in the hall, his animation starts playing and then you close the door and the cycle continues. Simple. Nope. Not Spring Bussy 2.0. He's different. When you look at him on the cameras in his final phase, he won't immediately play his animation like Foxy does. Instead, he's kinda like Fredbear 2.0 in a way, where he has a timer for when he'll actually attack, bringing up the same issue as Fredbear 2.0, where you'll probably end up closing the door earlier than you need to and building up your generator heat. Mixing these two characters together is gruesome. Introducing them both at the same time, on top of another character that demands your attention consistently, downright vile. I'd rather stick my willy in the exhaust pipe of a running motorcycle than deal with these two douchebags ever again in my life. There is one final threat I have yet to mention, but because of the strategy I used to beat this game, I actually never encountered them. That threat being the Golden Cupcake. According to the wiki, he only appears on the 3rd night. Amazing! Fuck 3 threats introduced at the same time, why not 4? He has a chance to appear on any camera, just acting as a visual annoyance. To get him to move, just switch to another camera and he'll disappear. I'm guessing because my strategy only had me using 1 camera throughout the entire night, it never gave him a chance to spawn. I'm not totally sure, and again, the wiki says he's only active on night 3. Why not nights 4, 5, and 6? I don't really know. This character seems like a weird inclusion. Let me know in the comments if you know more about this little guy. Hey there, Future Dexter here, coming in to inform you with some much needed corrections for something I mentioned earlier. I made a whole big point about introducing Fredbear 2.0 and Spring Bonnie 2.0 at the same time. Apparently I'm retarded. Fredbear 2.0 isn't introduced until Thursday night. I apologize. I don't know how I got that so incredibly wrong. I probably just remembered how ass I thought that duo was together and misremembered them being introduced at the same time. I don't know. Again, I apologize. Let's get back to the goon session. The remainder of the nights are just more difficult variations of each other. No new characters are introduced. Something crazy you'll notice, however, is the incredible spike in difficulty after Wednesday. Who would have thought being bombarded by AIDS can do a real number on you? This is actually the most common criticism I've seen of this game. The difficulty curve isn't a curve, it's a steep cliff that you're at the bottom of. I recognize why people feel this way, but guys, I was able to beat it. You know, the guy that's actually probably the worst FNAF player of all time, If I did it, you can do it. I promise. Oh, something I decided to not talk about was what happens after each night. Every time you complete a night, we're put into a cutscene where Scott, which again is our character, is scanning the animatronics for paranormal activity. I'm not sure what the name of the device he's using is, but this is what he's doing. I know that because I know how to use context clues. Also because the wiki told me that's what he's doing here. Remember those phone calls I talked about at the beginning of the video? If I want to cover the lore, it's important I talk about those phone calls a bit more. I know. Ugh, Dexter's talking about the lore in a game. He's really bad at that. He's only funny when he's talking about the gameplay. I know, trust me. I'm gonna try my best though, because the story in this game is honestly really, really cool, and I want to share it with you all. I don't want to be like some other game reviewers who tell you to just play the game for yourself to learn more. You're watching reviews to get a review. If you wanted to play the game, you'd just do that. You don't need me telling you to go play it. Night 2's phone call reveals that William has gotten a divorce, and apparently some of the workers are concerned that he's drowning himself in work. Henry tells him that safety comes first. Thank you, Henry. I would have never fucking guessed. Wednesday's call, William begins to brag about his new child-friendly animatronics. These animatronics he's talking about are Fredbear 2.0 and Spring Bastard 2.0. William reveals he's been studying child psychology. Uh-oh. In this day and age, there's only one direction this could be going. Just kidding. This isn't Dormitibus. It's not about to get weird. Afton claims his divorce is taking a toll on his mental health, but he's focusing on work to distract himself. Henry opens up about his feelings like a man never should. Some bullshit about how his only child Charlotte means so much to him, blah blah. Who cares, bro? I'm building fucking robots. That's way cooler than your lame-ass kid who can't even wipe her own ass properly. Thursday's phone call reveals that William wants to distance himself from his two sons and focus more on Elizabeth. I also noticed in this phone call that Afton seems a lot more passive-aggressive. Looking back on it now, that probably has something to do with his mental health. But while I was playing, I was rooting for William during these calls because of how sick and tired I was of Henry mentioning safety for the 200th time in a row. Additionally, on Thursday night, we learned that the diner is being shut down due to the disappearance of 6 children. I wonder who could have done that. Friday's phone call gets dark. Henry's daughter fucking died. RIP! Afton doesn't really seem to care. I'm with you there, William. Afton mentions he has to do something, and Henry tries to tell him to not do anything that might have negative consequences. William brushes this off as it seems he's too far gone. I'm assuming that these things that need to be done are the killing of the 6 kids. It's then around this time that William stuffs one of the kids, Cassidy McKay, into the Fredbear 2.0 suit and leaves her to rot inside Fredbear's family diner. Isn't it crazy how fucked up FNAF games are? I often forget how disturbing the actual story is when I'm making videos about these games. After the completion of Night 4, Scott scans Fredbear 2.0, and unlike the other characters scanned previously, the machine we have starts to go nuts when scanning Fredbear 2.0, likely because of the body of Cassidy inside. After the completion of Night 5, we get a monologue from William, explaining how he killed the kids and framed Henry.
It has been many years since the incident that changed everything. I have done unforgivable things since then. The missing children. It was all my doing.
We get the reveal of Circus Baby and hear about Elizabeth getting ganked by her. After the completion of Saturday, we get a cutscene of who I can only assume is Elizabeth, talking about needing to guide the other victims. I'm assuming Elizabeth because of how Baby guides throughout Sister Location, although I could be wrong on who this is. Finally, if you complete this game's max mode, you get one final cutscene, displaying William dying in the Spring Bonnie 2.0 suit, which is in 2D rather than 3D like the rest of the game for some unknown reason. And with that, that's all the Return to Bloody Nights has to offer as far as I'm aware. Overall, I really liked this game, but I can understand why a lot of people don't. Sure, it looks really pretty and the story is amazing, having us play as the phone guy from FNAF 1 and 2, but I think this game focuses too much on story and not enough on gameplay. Sure, the Game Jolt page does say it's primarily about the story, but I can still understand why people dislike the gameplay loop for being too repetitive and difficult, even though that's how most FNAF games end up panning out. I'm pretty sure the community liked Post Shift 2 more, which that game is just brutally difficult and confusing for the sake of being brutally difficult and confusing. So I guess that tells you where the community really is, where some appreciate Post Shift 2 over this game in terms of gameplay, which is wild, I will add. Recently, I've been covering a lot of very well-known fan games on this channel. Five Nights at Candy's, Pop Goes, and Animatronic Memories are probably names you're all familiar with. Recently, I've been looking for a FNAF game to cover that I personally had never heard of, and today I've definitely found one. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's super weird, but however, it does have its charm and an amazing story. So, let's waste no time and hop right into Tales of the Bunnyman. Tales of the Bunnyman opens with a cutscene that reminds me a lot of the old official Five Nights at Freddy's trailers, specifically Five Nights at Freddy's 2. We get several shots of the pizzeria interlaced with pieces of dialogue explaining the exposition of the story. We play as a man named Vincent Baldwin, who we later learn used to be a night guard and is one of the missing children's fathers, the father of Cassidy. We're entering the building to do some investigating and find out where our missing child went. And with our motive in mind, we're safe to head into Night 1 and start talking about what this game really has to offer. Night 1 introduces two characters, but before I start talking about them, I want to talk about the office itself. In our office, the first thing I want to get out of the way is this picture. I don't know who this is. I checked the wiki and couldn't figure out who this is. That's it. I just don't know who this is. Anyways, on to something actually important. The coolest thing I noticed about this office is that there are actually two rooms that we can move between, the typical office room and the boiler room. I'll talk more about the boiler room later when it becomes important. The door to the boiler room can be held shut, as animatronics will actually have to travel through it in order to get to your office. The only other things in our office is our camera system and a giant gift box. We can hide inside of this gift box to be able to protect ourselves from the first major threat of this night, Foxy. Foxy behaves pretty much exactly the same as in Five Nights at Freddy's 1. He starts on Pirate's Cove and makes his way through some phases before attacking. However, something unique about Foxy is he actually has two completely different attacks he can perform, each of which requires you to do something completely different to counteract him. The first attack he has is pretty simple. After he leaves Pirate's Cove, he will charge towards your office. When he does, you'll have to quickly jump inside the present until you hear him run away, after which you can jump back out and continue. His other attack is unfortunately a mechanic I've grown to dislike more and more as I play FNAF games. After leaving Pirate's Cove, Foxy has a chance to appear randomly on one of your cameras. When he does, all you have to do is find him and stare at him until he goes back to Pirate's Cove. This is mainly a me thing, but I've personally grown tired of the find them on the cameras mechanic. Yes, I do play Five Nights at Freddy's for a living, so yes, I'm going to see repeated mechanics a lot. Most sane people don't play as much Five Nights at Freddy's as I do, so most people won't find this mechanic to be that big of a deal, but hey, at least it's not a stupid fucking music box mechanic. We'll talk about that later. The only other threat introduced on this night is Bonnie. Bonnie is incredibly simple in how he works, as is typical in most FNAF games that feature him. Bonnie will make his way through the building and to your office. Afterwards, you'll be able to hear him at your door. You'll need to quickly go up to the door and hold it shut until you hear him leave, like Five Nights at Freddy's 4. When you do, you'll know it's safe to reopen the door and continue the night. Very basic. That's just how we like Bonnie, isn't it, guys? Right? You like it when Bonnie's basic, right? You wouldn't want Bonnie to just hot bottom right into your office and start fingering you, would you? Freak. And with that, we can move on to the post-night 1 minigame. Here's where we get to talking a lot about how cool this game really is. This game does narrative storytelling in a different way than any other FNAF game I've ever seen. Instead of an 8-bit minigame or a slideshow lore dump, Tales of the Bunnyman turns into a visual novel during the post-night sections, having you play in the perspective of a different character each night. I think this is actually super cool. While yes, you may think that it looks straight out of a My Hero Academia DeviantArt fan page, it is very clear that an amazing amount of care and effort went into these post-night sections, and that cannot go unnoticed. Before I really start talking about the lore of this game, I need to make it incredibly clear that there was so much poured into this story. There's so many details that I could point out that would make this video quite literally take hours to complete. And while I'd love to be able to talk about all of it, I don't have the confidence in myself to do so, and to be able to portray it in the way that it rightfully deserves. I'll be going over what happens in the story, but I won't be diving into every single minute detail, and I apologize if you were hoping that I would. Anyways, in this minigame, we play in the perspective of Jeremy Jr. Fitzgerald. After hanging out with his friends at Freddy Fazbear's, he notices that his mom has not yet come to pick him up. After waiting an extended period of time, he decides to just watch the performance on stage. Hearing a strange whistling coming from backstage, he enters to investigate, only to abruptly get abducted and murdered by the Bunny Man, going on to possess Bonnie. I honestly think that these post-night minigames are a breath of fresh air in this genre. I've never seen anything like it before, and I'd love to see more FNAF games try to do something new like this to tell their story. But now it's time for us to move on to Night 2. Night 2 only introduces one new thread, that being Chica. Chica does exactly what you'd expect her to do, and no, I don't mean eating until she pops like a balloon. What I really mean is moving through the cameras and then going to your office. Oh my fucking god, that is gross. Yuck. Fucking yuck, bro. She does go through one additional camera compared to Bonnie, making you see her less often than him, but other than that, she's exactly the same as Bonnie. I'll also use this night to talk about the only thing I dislike about this game. The mouse. Oh my god, this mouse is atrocious. Oh no, this mouse is really bad. If you're at all familiar with my channel, you'll already know that the way the mouse works is always something I'll have a problem with when fan games try to switch it up. In most FNAF games, when you move your mouse to the side of the screen will scroll in that direction until it hits the end of your office. That makes sense, and this is good. Tales of the Bunny Man instead decided to take a route similar to Sister Location. If you are to move your mouse to one side of the screen in Tales of the Bunny Man, your mouse won't follow the moving office. Instead, the game will keep track of its simulated X and Y positions in the office. And while this may sound super cool, in practice it leads to you having to move your mouse all the way across your desk or increasing your mouse's sensitivity to be able to make up for it. Is this nitpicky? Yes. But I am giving my opinion on a game, so I think it's important to talk about things that I notice, especially when it's the main interaction mechanic in the entire game. Anyways, moving on to the post-Night 2 minigame, where we play in the perspective of Susie Sutherland. The group of friends were supposed to play the newly installed arcade game, Pop Goes vs. the Machinist? 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 I don't know. Instead, she decides to split up from the group to go look for Bonnie. Walking around the building, we can talk to a kid named Ollie, who mentions something about Bonnie acting weird recently. Given the timeline of the events this game has, I'm fairly certain that this cutscene is taking place 16 days after Jeremy's disappearance. So I think it's safe to say that Jeremy at this point in time is already inside of the Bonnie costume. During this minigame is when Susie can also find a VHS tape relating to Edwin Murray. If you couldn't already tell, this game's story is heavily entwined with the official FNAF games. Later, Susie heads over to Pirate's Cove to get a peek at Foxy, getting startled by William inside of the Spring Bonnie suit. It's at this point I need to mention two things. One, why is this specific camera in the post-nights a 3D render instead of the usual 2D drawing? And two, why is William the only character in the entire game to have voice acting? Mr. Afton, don't scare me like that.
Now, what's a missy like you doing snooping around a pirate's property?
Why is he voice acted? I'm much more curious about my second question. I was a little caught off guard when I first heard him speak, since, again, nobody in the game thus far ever has. But regardless, that's not very important. After a brief, uncomfortable conversation with Afton, we meet up with our friends again at the new arcade machine, and as we play the game, we're seen being stalked by the Bunny Man. If you couldn't already guess, Susie Sutherland goes on to possess Chica. Now it's time to talk about Night 3, which introduces one new threat, Freddy and the Marionette. Now, pause. Let's just stop for a moment and talk about Freddy first, okay? Freddy, like Foxy, has two different attacks. We'll talk about the more simple one first. Freddy will make his way through the cameras and enter your boiler room. The reason he does so is to attempt to cut the power, because doing so will allow for the Marionette to come spread your buns and lick up your crack. To prevent this from happening, we will have to enter the boiler room and hold our flashlight on his face, causing him to bug out and leave the boiler room. However, before he does, we actually get to see him creepily tilt his body. Such a small detail, but I actually really like it. Now we can talk about the other mechanic Freddy has that I originally thought was going to make me want to skin an elephant. As previously mentioned, it's clear that Freddy wants to assist in helping the Marionette grope us. So, Freddy's other attack is him going to the music box to fuck up the Marionette's sleep schedule. Fun fact, I used to work a graveyard shift at a news station, and let me tell you, you don't want to fuck with nobody's sleep schedule, bro. So, in order to save the Marionette's sanity, we must remotely shut down the music box before Freddy can finish. Moving on to the Night 3 Post-9 minigame, we play in the perspective of Fritz Smith II. Let me tell you, this guy is a big fan of Foxy. So much so that he insists on constantly talking like a pirate, something that made me want to eat my own lungs throughout my playthrough because I was writhing in cringe. A.S. the worst one. It be fixin' to be jolly. What the fuck does that mean? Fritz leaves the group to go look for Foxy. Going to Pirate's Cove, he finds a decommissioned Foxy behind the curtains. Additionally, he finds a diary written by Henry. I guess for some reason, this is where Henry goes to vent, right next to the fucked up looking robot. A little weird, Henry, but you do you, boo. Inside of the diary, we read that Henry is struggling to cope with the loss of his daughter and his theory about Jeremy and Susie's disappearances having something to do with each other. Little did he know how right he truly was. Whilst continuing to read the diary, the Bunny Man appears behind him and drags him into the back room, all while taunting him, saying that he thought he was more interested in Foxy than Henry's diary. Fritz would go on to possess Foxy. Moving on to Night 4, we get to talk about a very odd threat, Balloon Boy. Yes, for some reason, Balloon Boy is in this game. Don't question it. I guess the developer of this game just hates fun. Balloon Boy isn't a very difficult threat to deal with, thankfully, instead serving more of an annoyance, which is very fitting for his character. Balloon Boy can only appear in 2 rooms in the entire game, the boiler room and your backstage camera. You'll have to listen out for a vent sound cue. When you hear it, you'll have to travel to the back room and find where Balloon Boy is, because, unlike Freddy, he has multiple different locations that he can stand in. Once you find Balloon Boy, just like Freddy, all you have to do is hold your flashlight on him until he goes away. I'm really not entirely sure why Balloon Boy exists in this game. I have yet to find any story reason for it either. Maybe it's just a popular character to put into the game, or maybe I'm just reading way too much into this. I'm not really sure. But hey, let's move on to the post-Night 4 minigame. In this minigame, we play as Gabriel Collins. Gabriel sneaks into Freddy Fazbear's Pizza because he has a hunch that his missing friends are still inside. Once he enters, he searches the location, eventually discovering the Marionette. They quickly become friends and begin exploring the establishment together. Eventually, they stumble across Michael and William Afton. William is trying to convince Michael to work as a performer, playing the character of Bonnie. But before we can hear anything else, William spots us. He chases us through the building, and the Marionette hides us in its gift box. However, unfortunately for Gabriel, William finds him anyway and is knocked out. He wakes up inside of the Freddy Fazbear costume, watching William Afton jump around the dining room, mocking him through his last breaths. Gabriel would then go on to possess Freddy. This is easily one of the most fucked up cutscenes throughout the entire game. I'm no edgelord, as some people seem to think I am, but I really enjoy when games show us the depraved things that the villains do. I and many others don't want to just hear about things happening, we want to see them as well. Of course, I don't think we all want to literally see the children getting murdered, but I think showing off the situations in the way that Tales of the Bunnyman does is incredibly interesting. Next, we get to move on to Night 5, the final main night in Tales of the Bunnyman. This night adds Fredbear, an interesting but fitting final character choice. Fredbear acts as an everything character, being able to take on the role of every animatronic besides Balloon Boy and Foxy. However, unlike most everything nights that take place in other FNAF games, Fredbear is active alongside each other animatronic, adding one more layer of stress to the nights. Again, he doesn't have any unique mechanics by himself, but this time I'm honestly okay with that, only because the other characters are still active. It's at this point I want to bring up something I should have brought up a long time ago: the character designs. From what I've seen, the community seems to be pretty split on their opinions of these character designs. A lot of people love them and think that in combination with the grungy environment, it makes them look very creepy. However, on the other hand, I've seen plenty of people who think that the designs look unprofessional and seemingly come out of a game that came out many years ago. I personally have no problems with the character designs. I think they look creepy and uncomfortable. However, I do think that the texturing on the characters does look a bit odd, but nothing that I feel takes away from the immersion. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Also, since I'm being a little meta right now, go subscribe to my new channel, Dxtr Gray. I cover non-FNAF horror games over there, and we have a lot of fun. Anyways, moving on to the final post-night minigame where we play in the perspective of Cassandra Baldwin, or better known, Cassidy. Now, noticing that she's the only member of her friend group that hasn't gone missing, she vows to figure out what happened to them and find where they all disappeared to. Entering the back room, she finds a Fredbear plushie which, throughout the game, has been shown to be able to teleport on its own, and yet, for some reason, nobody felt like that was weird at all. This is really the only gripe I have with this story, the plushie teleporting around, and multiple people know about this, yet nobody is at all a little concerned about it. On top of that, it is literally never once elaborated on or explained why this happens. I can't even draw a conclusion because there's quite literally no reason, but let's try to put that behind us for a moment and continue. We do know that the plushie is being used by Afton to lure Cassidy into the back room. Now, pause. I know I just said there's literally no reason given as to why it's teleporting, and you may be questioning why I said that even though I just stated that William was using it to lure Cassidy. However, that still doesn't explain how it was fucking teleporting, and still doesn't explain why nobody gave that a second thought. Anyways, Cassidy is successfully lured into the back room. Scared, Cassidy runs out of the pizzeria and later returns for a Halloween party. Baka! I know that's not what that says, I'm sorry. As she explores, she's found by the bunny man who presumably knocks her out after stating, "You forgot me." She awakens to find herself inside of the Fredbear costume. William explains that originally he planned to save the Fredbear costume for Henry, but decided to use it for Cassidy instead. During their conversation, it's revealed that Vincent, the character that we've been playing as in the night sections, according to William, is a terrible night guard, which would technically leave him responsible for not noticing the children's disappearances on the camera, since every action that William had been taking was done under the constant surveillance of those cameras, including what's happening right now in front of us. This would give us a perfect reason as to why he's returning to the restaurant now to find his daughter, because he didn't watch her like he was supposed to. He never saw what happened. Afterwards, we get one last cutscene. Vincent walks up to the Fredbear animatronic and realizes it's his daughter. However, he trips and falls, which leads to him getting killed by his own daughter, and Tales of the Bunnyman abruptly comes to a close. Almost. There's actually one more thing to talk about, that being Night 6, or as this game calls it, the epilogue. In it, after completing the final challenge, which is just a harder version of Night 5, we see the line, "He finally found the suit that will become his tomb, the last lingering piece of his soul." a good song never dies. With that, we get to watch William's springlock failure and onlook as he bleeds out. We're shown that Vincent, our character, was found dead inside of Freddy Fazbear's, and several news outlets labeled him as the reason the kids were murdered. I can't lie to you guys, I'm really eager to talk about this story, since after reading into it, I actually think it's really good, and it's clear that a bunch of effort was put into it. But like I said previously, I'm just not confident in my abilities to do it for myself. I've tossed around the idea of just reading the highly detailed explanation on the wiki that was written by somebody that was far more talented than I am, but I've decided against doing that since I don't want to come off as lazy and uninspired. And as much as I hate saying this, I'd highly recommend you go to the wiki and read up on it. It's actually such an amazingly well-written story, and I think it might just be one of the best takes on the official FNAF story I've ever seen. Overall, I think Tales of the Bunnyman is an enjoyable experience. The post-night minigames are interesting, and the story is fantastic and told in a way that isn't overtly confusing like most FNAF games like to be. However, I do think that the actual gameplay mechanics are pretty lackluster. Not only does each character not really have synergy with one another, this game is also just too easy. Throughout the nights, it never really feels like the characters are becoming more aggressive, which tends to lead to boring nights where you're just waiting for the much more enjoyable minigame sections. Popular pre-existing IPs in FNAF games. I'm sure quite a few examples already come to your mind when I say that. Five Nights at Wario's, Five Nights at Sonic's, Five Nights at the Krusty Krab, among many others, are very popular examples of this. However, in my journey of playing FNAF games to find games worthy enough to talk about, there's one very popular IP I see show up very frequently. An IP that has so many games made by multiple different talented individuals, and the person who made the game we'll be talking about today needs no introduction. Today, we're going to be talking about a FNAF game about Teletubbies. You might think that's weird since I just talked about the Tubbyland Archives Act 1 a few weeks ago, but this is a perfect example of just how many FNAF fan games have been built around this IP. Today, we'll be covering The Remnants of Tubbyland, a FNAF fan game made by Avocado Dreams, the same person responsible for one of the most terrifying FNAF games ever designed, Graveyard Shift at Freddy's. Rest assured, this game is terrifying as well, and not only that, it's also really hard. So let's waste no more time and jump right into The Remnants of Tubbyland. To begin, we have to talk about the setting in which this game takes place. Typically in FNAF games, we see the setting as a restaurant, with animatronics that were on stage and would sing in the party room while the children ate their food. But not this time around. The Remnants of Tubbyland takes place in a daycare that's been seemingly left to rot. We take the job as a night guard, and before we know it, we're thrown into a twisted death trap. Loading into the office for the first time, there's already a lot to talk about. Please don't be as hard as the fucking other. What the fuck am I looking at? Let's start by mentioning how fucking creepy this game looks. Obviously, we've got this little fella sitting in front of us, and of course, he will become more important later on. But seriously, just look at the scenery in this game. I honestly think it's creepier than Graveyard Shift. Everything just looks so grainy, uncanny, and gross. It seems like a really nasty place to have to spend your time, and yet here we are spending our time here. We get our night one phone call, and it's just about as basic as you could imagine. The typical night one phone call stuff. The phone guy introduces where we are, why we're watching over the place, and pretends like there's nothing to be worried about, because the murder robots would never murder us.
So if they enter your room, they could knock stuff over and probably damage themselves more than they already have.
Just say they can blow my shit out. The reason we're given as to why we're here is pretty unclear. However, we're told that our main objective is just to watch the robots since they are capable of moving around. At least they can acknowledge that this is something that is happening. Of course, he says they won't hurt us, but also decides it's a great idea to explain to us how to defend ourselves on the off chance they come into our office. He explains their facial recognition and says that if they move around too much, they may damage themselves. So I guess we've got some suicidal robots around here. Fantastic. Anyways, how many threats are introduced on night 1? 2. 2 threats are introduced on night 1, so let's go over them. Let's start with this game's main attraction, Dipsy. So I don't see nobody yet. Bro, let me tell you, Avocado Dreams, she knows how to set an atmosphere. What the fuck is that? Dude, Dipsy Dick will begin on camera 2. If we take a look at the map, we can see the path that the characters will have to take to reach us. It's a little bit confusing, so really take a look at it. As you can see, camera 2 is not actually connected to our office at all. This entire building is just one big spiral to reach our office. So Dipsy Dick will have to start from camera 2, then go to 3, 4, 5, and to finally end up in camera 7 before he can attack us. Make sense? Good. Dipsy makes no noise when moving around, so you'll have to track him yourself on the cameras. Once he reaches camera 7, he actually has 2 phases. One far away from the camera, and another where he's a lot closer to the camera. And even despite the fact that this is a robot, somehow his face is able to distort to an unrealistic length. Don't question it. Ooh, spooky. That's all that matters. Like, an entire half of the building has no cameras in it. That's so ugly. That's so ugly. Once Dipsy makes it to the second phase on camera 7, his next movement opportunity will have him disappear. When he does, that's how you know he's about to attack you. Since Dipsy will never move backwards, it's always easy to keep track of him. Once he does disappear, you'll have to put on the sun mask located on your desk. It works exactly the same as the mask from FNAF 2, and of course, Avocado Dreams did not disappoint with the animations. Take a look. Oh my god, dude, that'd be so sick! Damn, bro. That is so cool. That's so cool, bro.
I can't lie to you, man. This shit cool as fuck. This shit cool as fuck.
Just creepy as fuck, isn't it? God, I love it. It's so cool. Anyways, something else about your mask that you've probably noticed is this asthma meter. This is basically just the scrapped toxic meter from Five Nights at Freddy's 2. The longer your mask is on, the higher your asthma meter will increase, and if it increases all the way, the mask will forcefully be taken off, and you'll have to wait for a cooldown before you can put it on again. And that's obviously not a good thing, especially not on later nights. Now, for the second threat this night introduces, Trumpet. Trumpet acts as more of a nuisance character rather than an actual threat in this game. However, don't let that make you think you can ignore him, because you most certainly cannot. Occasionally, you'll be able to see Trump Dick rising up from behind your desk. It does make a noise, but on later nights, you may find it hard to hear it while you're on the cameras, so you should get into the habit of checking often. When Trumpet starts to rise, you will have to quickly find his error message that randomly spawns on one of your cameras. My least favorite FNAF mechanic hidden into a character that technically doesn't enter the camera themselves. I'm onto you, game. Watch your back. When you find the error, simply press the power button and Trumpet will fall back behind your desk. But what happens if you just let Trumpet fully appear and start blasting your eardrums with the loudest sound you've ever heard in your entire life? Well, the sound that emits from it will slowly cause the AI value of every other character to slowly increase until Trumpet is turned off. And even after you turn Trumpet off, you want to hear something crazy? The AI values will never go back down throughout the night. So let me tell you, you do not want to miss a Trumpet attack. You will very quickly regret it. Old Trumpet Dick. Night 2 introduces probably the most revolting, nasty, fuck-ass character I've ever seen in my life on this earth. Luckily, it's not nearly as bad as one of Avocado Dream's other demon spawns, Sheriff Slither Dick, but trust me, this character... Luckily, it's not nearly as bad as one of Avocado Dream's other demon spawns, Sheriff Slither Dick, but trust me, this character will still make you want to cover your willy with honey and jump wiener first into a fire ant hill. That character, of course, is Poe. Poe is a very simple character to understand. However, that's probably the scariest part about her. Poe starts on camera 1. She will then move to camera 3. From 3, she will either move to camera 2 or camera 4. You want her to move to camera 4. Trust me, it's better for your mental health overall. She will then move between cameras 6, 4, 5, and 3 for the rest of the night. She will never naturally wander to your office, but don't let that make you think you're safe. You're not safe. You're never safe. This is easily the worst character in the entire game.
While Poop is on the cameras, if you're looking at the camera she's on, you'll be able to hear the song she emits as she wanders around. You'll have to track her around the cameras to constantly make sure the song is playing. If the song ever stops, you're in trouble. On night 2, a large red button will appear on your desk. If the music stops, all you have to do is push this button and her music will reset. But you have to be really fast. If her music is off, that's when she'll make her way to your office. If you at any point see her in camera 7, you need to hit the button immediately. Faster than you've ever hit anything else before in your entire life. Faster than a 1950s husband hits his wife after coming home and not having a martini in his hand the moment he walks through the door. If you don't, obviously, if you don't, if you don't, obviously she's If you don't, obviously she's gonna bounce into your office and start bouncing on it crazy style. Riding it like a bike with no seat type shit. Oh, but he's fast. It is me or did Poe get really fast? Oh shit. Oh my god, my ass just fell off. Fuck. And before you say anything, look at this ugly fuck. You don't want that. The problem that Poe brings into this game is obviously requiring your constant attention. And Dipsy has already been shown to require a lot of your attention as well. And trust me, the synergy that Poe has with every other character that will be introduced into this game is prominent and brutal the entire way through. So let's continue talking about them, shall we? Night 3 brings on this fuckhead in your office, Tinky Winky. So I really like that. I don't like this fucker staring at me right now. I can't lie. That I'm not a huge fan of, the way he's looking at me. He's like licking his lips and shit. And it's like, let's not. Okay. Ooh. Tinky Dick works in the exact same way as Peggy from Showman's The Awakening, which I've covered on this channel before, and you should go watch that video after you finish this one. Tinky Dick is very much a weeping angel character. If you're looking at him, he won't move. But if you have your camera up, he will slowly begin to creep towards you throughout 3 different phases. Each phase is pretty obvious, so don't worry about not noticing it. After the final phase, he will attempt to jump you like you're in the streets of Compton. All you have to do is put your mask on and he'll go back to where he was. However, unlike Dipsy, Tinky requires you to be a lot faster with your mask, and you can't put on your mask before an attack to bait the attack out. Tinky has to attack before putting the mask on will push him backwards. Thankfully, if you're on your cameras, he will force them down when he attacks. So it isn't just a guessing game, but you have to be really, really fast. Especially on later nights. You'll have close to only 1 second to put it on once he attacks, lest your butt cheeks get spread and he lathers peanut butter and jelly on that shit like a midnight snack. Oh, okay. It's blatantly obvious. Huh, bitch? Was I just not fast enough? Do you have to be like really, really quick with it? Obviously, Tinky brings up an enormous problem. With 2 characters requiring you to constantly watch them on the cameras, adding a character that penalizes you for using the cameras is obviously going to cause quite a bit of problems. This is actually the problem that led to me having to change the way I play the game and switch up my strategy to solely focusing on Poe and occasionally checking on camera 7 to see if Dipsy has arrived yet. It's also this character that made me decide to start forcing attacks from him. For example, let's say Dipsy just attacked me. I know it's going to be a while before Dipsy can come to attack me again. So in order to not have the asthma meter blow up my guts, I would sit and stare at the cameras until Tinky attacked me, resetting his timer before the next Dipsy attack. It's a very AIDS strategy that makes me die a little bit on the inside, but it does get the job done well enough. Well, now it's time to move on to night 4 and introduce a character so sepsis-ridden you'd think you've injected yourself with every disease on Earth. Lala. Lala starts in camera 1 like Poop. She has a set path around the map to get to your office, very similar to Dipsy. On this night, you'll notice that each camera Lala will travel through will now be equipped with a camera button, allowing you to take a picture of each camera and obviously emitting a flash of light at the same time. I'm sure you can tell exactly where this is going. Lala will move throughout the cameras during this night. You will have to flash her on whatever camera she's on to push her back.
Then go to the camera you pushed her to and flash her again. Keep doing this until you push her back into camera 1. When she goes back into camera 1, she will shut down and won't attack again for a while, so doing this is very important. And if you're lucky, you can catch her really quickly and only have to push her back once. The problem with her? She is very, very fast. She will move through her cameras faster than the fat bitch in line at the Golden Corral who's hopping up and down because the buffet just got refilled. Sit down, Shamu.
There are so many things that I don't understand. I don't know what's going on right now. Oh. You're telling me she got all the way through the cameras that fast? You're telling me she got through every camera that fast? No. No. This is bullshit. Let me tell you what this is. This is bullshit, bro. Like, what the fuck is that? What is that? How the fuck am I supposed to keep track of those 3 fuckers at the same time while also not looking at the cameras for this fucker? I'll tell you how, you don't. That's bullshit. What the fuck? We now have an interesting group of mechanics to talk about. Thankfully, even though this game does rely a lot on RNG, there was a very clear attempt put in place by Avocado Dreams to mitigate how much RNG is actually involved. The main example I can point to is Tinky Winky. Tinky Winky will never attack you if Lala has left camera 1. This prevents an insta-loss that would otherwise be present. Obviously, if Tinky Dick is about to attack and you get an attack from Lala, if you were to deal with Lala, then Tinky would attack you, and while being attacked, Lala would easily make it to your office and kill you. So thank God Tinky isn't able to attack you while Lala is. However, his aggression meter will still increase, meaning that immediately after you deal with Lala, it's very likely you will get an insta attack from Tinky. So you'll need to be fast, but at least there isn't any luck involved. Night 5 introduces nothing new, and is just a much harder version of Night 4. I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you guys. I was not able to beat Night 5. I'm sure that if I threw in hours upon hours of attempts, I would have beaten it eventually, but I just don't have the type of patience like other people do. I applaud you if you beat it, but I did not. But now we get to talk about what everyone who's familiar with this game has been waiting for: Custom Night, and the secret night that comes along with it. If you go into Custom Night, you may notice that there is an extra character slot just labeled NA. You'll also notice that you're unable to set its AI value. If you input the code 34193 into the other characters and press start, you will be entered into the secret boss night this game has to offer: Dream Night. Dream Night introduces 2 new threats, while disabling all other threats we've seen so far. These 2 new characters are Nunu and Evocation. Let's start with Evocation since he was easily the character that confused me the most. Evocation will begin on camera 2, slowly emerging from a screen. After he leaves that camera, he will randomly teleport to any other camera except camera 1. You'll have to quickly find him and keep your eyes on him. From there, he can attack you in one of 2 ways. The first way will have him get super close to the camera and laugh like a child, which just fills me with rage because I hate children. When he does, all you have to do is flash whichever camera he went to. His other attack has him disappear from the camera entirely. If he does, he will immediately teleport inside of your office and float above you like he's possessed by the devil. If this is the attack he chooses, all you have to do is put your mask on and he will leave instantly. You do have to be pretty fast with both attacks, so make sure you have your reflex game on point. Another thing to point out about the way Evocation attacks is that he will never attack the same way twice. So, his first attack will be random, but from there it will be incredibly easy to predict how he will attack since he'll just be alternating between the 2, which honestly serves to make this boss fight easier. Anyways, on to the only other threat present in Dream Night: Nunu, the vacuum, or if you have bad teeth and your country's food tastes like shit, a Hoover. Nunu is very simple, really just being a distraction character. He will randomly wander around cameras 4, 5, and 6. Occasionally, you may hear a loud metal bang. That means Nunu is just being a pesky little guy. Find which camera he's on, which should be pretty easy since his eyes will be flashing and he'll be emitting a nasty noise. Simply flash the camera he's on and bada bing bada boom, he's dealt with. Upon beating Dream Night, you will unlock that special character in the Custom Night screen. Spoiler alert, it's fucking Evocation. You might be wondering where Nunu is. Well, Nunu is actually a part of evocation. So if you activate evocation, Nunu will be activated alongside him as well, which I honestly think is really cool. As far as the story of this game goes, Avocado Dreams kept it pretty simple. After completing Night 5, we get this news article along with our paycheck. Infamous Tubbyland Daycare finally sees its end after a 15-year long battle to sell the property. Following a tragic accident back in 2000, the childcare facility promptly closed its doors and left the building dormant, alone, and forgotten. Years having flown by, locals urged city officials to accelerate the auction process due to rumors that have been circulating the desolate daycare. The property is planned to be utilized for a brand new facility using the same philosophies and presentation ideas, but aiming for a new and safer direction. So it's very clear that something terrible happened in 2000. So what could that possibly be referring to? According to the wiki, back in 2000, Nunu fucking exploded inside of the daycare, starting a massive fire. Our player, Parker Anderson, was in the building at the time with his son, Lucas. Lucas most likely being the identity of evocation, which would also make sense as to why Nunu is activated alongside of him and why a child will laugh when he gets close to the camera. When the fire erupted, Parker left the building and saved himself, leaving his son behind to be burned alive. Years later, as the building is going to be demolished after being sold, Parker takes up the night shift job. He's unable to move on. Filled with guilt, he's not capable of forgetting what he did. Of course, Lucas's soul lingers inside the daycare, still angry, unforgiving of what his father did to him. So in Dream Night, he lashes out to attack. There's honestly not a whole lot of info on this game's lore. That is quite literally all I was able to gather from it. If there's anything I'm missing or something new comes up after this video goes live, please let me know in the comments below, as I definitely feel like there's a bit more to this. But as far as I'm aware, that's all the remnants of Tubbyland has to offer. Overall, I think this game is incredibly scary. It's very good at keeping you on your toes the entire time, and while I may feel like the later nights are not balanced very well, and that there is still a large deal of RNG to have to deal with, I can't go without appreciating Avocado Dreams' attempts at mitigating it as much as possible. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with me, or do you think that this game is just a bad attempt at recreating the amazing experience that was Graveyard Shift at Freddy's? What is your favorite Roblox game? Don't answer that. I don't want to see any comments saying Forsaken, that game is terrible. Let me be more specific. What is your favorite Roblox FNAF game? Maybe you say FNAF 2 Reimagined. Maybe you say dog watching. Well, I personally have found a new FNAF Roblox series that we could add to the conversation. Today, we'll be talking about Five Nights at Marcus, a series many of you may have never heard about. However, with 3 games being in the series, I'm willing to bet you've heard of the third. It's just a little game that goes by the name of Far From Land. Yeah. That's something even I didn't know about until starting to do work for this video. This series tries a lot of interesting things and succeeds and fails at a lot of them. Today, I'll be going over each of those things, so join me as we dive into the world of Five Nights at Marcus. And with Five Nights at Marcus, we obviously start with the first one, and Night 1 of Game 1. And with Night 1 on the way, we bust a nut into our office and can start learning about everything important that we need to learn. To start, let's just talk about our office itself. Obviously, we have our monitors for our cameras in front of us, but we also have a picture of a cat named Oscar on our desk, and I think that's great. Also, if you open the drawer on your desk, you'll see another picture of Oscar. Just lovely. Looking up, we see a big vent, but we'll focus on that later. Turning around, we'll see the door to our office, which cannot be closed, which is a bit concerning just knowing the type of game we're playing right now. And behind us is also a maintenance panel, which we will be using to complete the night. How do we do that, you ask? Great question. On this maintenance panel, you will see several tasks we have to complete. That's right, Five Nights at Marcus uses a task-based completion system rather than a time-based one, which can be a blessing and a curse in some instances. The tasks are mind-numbing. Just press a button and wait for it to load 5 times and the night is over. But what about the threat this night introduces? That would seemingly be Marcus himself. You can find him on the cameras just laying on the fucking floor. He has no legs, so we can all laugh at him for being crippled. Where's your life alert, buddy, huh? Get up!
Marcus will try to get to the door behind you. However, Marcus makes no sound cues, and because he has no legs, is not visible at the door or window either. So, how are you supposed to know when he's actually arrived? Another great question. Gosh, you guys are on a roll today. The answer is pretty simple. You really have to make sure you're watching him on the cameras, and once you see him leave camera 1, you'll know he's at your door. But Dexter, how are you supposed to keep him away? Oh my goodness, another amazing question. You're doing so well. Inside of your maintenance panel, along with your tasks menu, you also have a shock menu. Go to the shock menu and use the shock when Marcus is outside of your door, and he'll scream like a bitch and run away. And then his cycle will continue. Night 1 is piss easy since Marcus barely moves, but don't worry, this is going to get much more complicated as we go. So let's move on to night 2. Night 2 rolls around and we have one new threat to talk about. And for some reason, I'm not gonna lie to you, this night serves to show me how stressful this game is about to become. Let's talk about it. The new threat on this night, not gonna lie, I don't know the name of him, so I'm just gonna call him Green Man. Green Man attacks in the same way as Marcus, except noticing him is a lot easier. When he gets to your office, he has 2 phases. One outside of your window, and one where he's standing in the fucking doorway. Which I can't lie, scared the shit out of me the first time I saw it. Oh. What was that? I didn't like that. No, I fucking didn't. What the fuck was that about? Which you can see in my full playthrough over on my second channel, Dxtr Black. Exact same thing as Marcus here. Whenever you see him in your hallway or at your door, shock his ass and he'll reset. Now, if you remember about 24 seconds ago, you'll notice I said that this night is stressful. You might be wondering how that's even possible considering there's only 2 threats and they both do the exact same thing. Well, my reasoning for this surrounds Marcus and the fact you have to watch him so closely on the cameras. Marcus moves incredibly quickly, it seems. Like, way faster than I would have ever expected for a Night 2 character to move. I was expecting to be able to do my tasks in bursts of 50% before checking on him, but that got me killed very quickly. We gotta get this thing to 100 before we go check on him, though. That's my goal. We gotta get you to 100, bro. Perfect. Fuck me in my ass. Okay, well, I didn't expect you to be that quick. He was a quick guy. Then I decided to do them in bursts of 25%, and that was working up until the point in the night where Green Man starts moving. Then I had to start doing my tasks in bursts of 10%, and even that felt like I was cutting it down to the wire with time management. And now, here's the really weird part. Throughout the first half of the night, Marcus was moving at the speed of sound. The moment Green Man activates, Marcus sits in his final camera for the rest of the night without moving. And this is so stressful for exactly the reason you think it is. With Marcus in his last camera, it only takes him one more movement opportunity to reach the office, which means I'm on edge the whole night, constantly checking to make sure he doesn't move. Because he's been stationary for so long, I'm thinking, there's no way he's not gonna move. He's going to anytime now, except nope. He never fucking moved. Just sitting there like a dick, scaring the shit out of me. Whatever. On to night 3. With night 3 coming along, so does another threat we get to talk about. And in all honesty, this threat doesn't make the game much harder, but Marcus 100% does. The threat introduced on this night is once again someone I don't know the name of, so I'm going to be calling him Vent Guy. And I'm guessing purely by saying his name, you can already guess what this guy is going to do. That's right, the exact same thing as Marcus. No, I'm not kidding. Vent Guy will attack your vents, and he actually has 2 different means of attacking you. The first will have him do exactly what Green Man does. He'll go through vent 1 and show up outside of your office. When he does, all you have to do is go to the shock menu on your maintenance panel and shock the vent. His second form of attack will have him attack the vent directly above your head, or vent 2. When you see him in this vent, for some reason, you don't shock the vent. This time around, you have to give him the Withered Foxy treatment and flash your light at him several times to make him go away. Turns out he's epileptic, and there's nothing I enjoy more than giving epileptic people seizures. Also, quick side tangent, I feel like it'd be hard to drive with epilepsy. And who knows, maybe you can't. There have been times where I'm driving on the highway, and on the sides of the road they have the little bumper things to prevent people from flying off the road, but these little bumper things have several support beams holding them in the ground, so when you're driving during the sunset, oftentimes the sun will line up with those fucking support beams, and and proceed to strobe me for the next 6 miles on the fucking road. Anyways, let's keep talking about the Five Nights at Freddy's game, shall we? Again, Vent Guy isn't really that big of an issue. Who is a fucking issue, however, is Marcus. At first, I thought Marcus was moving at the speed of fucking sound because there would be several, and I do mean several instances where I noticed Marcus leaves camera 1, so I shocked the hallway. Then moments later, I get killed by Marcus. At first, I thought this meant Marcus turned into a fucking bullet train, but no. I think I understand what's happening here. I'm pretty sure there's a window of time between Marcus leaving camera 1 and actually showing up outside of your office. And I think I was shocking the hallway during that window of time, which meant when Marcus actually did get to my hallway, I was never actually able to shock him, and I obviously couldn't see him on the cameras. I think this is a very, very bad mechanic. If this is truly how Marcus works, if Marcus can't be seen when he's in the hallway and he makes no sound cues to indicate he's entered the hallway, and you have a window of time between him disappearing off of all of the cameras and reaching the hallway, and your shock cooldown is very long, this brings up a very obvious problem of literally never being able to time Marcus properly and consistently. What needs to happen is when Marcus leaves camera 1, that means he is instantly in your hallway. What ended up happening constantly during my playthrough, which you can see over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, is I would see Marcus leave camera 1, so I'd shock the hallway. Then I'd check camera 4 to see if he'd been reset. When I saw he hadn't, I'd rush back to the maintenance panel and spam the shock button, which was always still charging at this point. Shock the hallway a second time, and only then would I see that Marcus would reset. This is very bad. One of the only flaws I've noticed with this game so far. This is not fun. This is not challenging. This is not innovative. This is just bad game design. And if the devs are looking for anything to change about this game, this is 100% the thing to change. But with that, we can move on to night 4. All right, recording Dxtr here. Giving a little note as I'm reading this script and remembering that I wrote this. Marcus, I was told that Marcus, after he is in camera 1 and he disappears, he doesn't go to the hallway. He actually goes to camera 3 after camera 1. However, thinking about that doesn't make sense because quite literally, every time I shocked the hallway and then shocked it a second time, Marcus was reset. So you're telling me that if that's true, what I just said right now, that he goes to camera 3 after camera 1, camera 3 is his final camera, you're telling me that every single feasible time Marcus left camera 1 and I shocked twice, he made a movement opportunity to camera 3 and then my hallway. He made that every time in that window of time without fail. I don't believe that. I have trouble believing that. I think what I wrote originally is correct, but I don't know. Let me know in the comments. Guys, I've got some great news for you. After a long time of waiting, the Skags plushie is finally live. I've been working with Makeshift to make the perfect Skags plushie possible, and I think he's turned out perfect. We obviously talk a lot about Five Nights at Freddy's on this channel, so I figured it'd be great to make him in the exact style as the FNAF plushies, which means he'll easily be able to sit on your desk or shelf without falling over. You guys made this possible. I could have never done this without you. To everyone who supported the petition a few months back, thank you guys so much. But you guys have to be fast, as Skags is only around for a limited time. Once this campaign is over, he'll be gone forever, so you really don't want to miss out. This is hands down the coolest thing that has ever happened to me as a YouTuber, and I never thought 2 years ago when I started this channel that it would get me this far in life. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate every single one of you. You guys have made my dreams come true, and this is one small way I can celebrate that. So go get yourself a Skags plushie before time runs out. He's the perfect gift for anyone who likes stuffed animals, and I guarantee if you put this guy in your bed, the Huzz are gonna flock to you like birds. So that's always a plus too. Thank you guys so much for all the support, and thank you to Makeshift for making this plushie with me and putting up with my constant tweaks to make sure that Skags is as perfect as he is. Sorry for interrupting. Let's get back to the video. Night 4 rolls around, and with it, another threat is introduced. Once again, the name of this character is currently unknown to me, so I'm going to be calling him Screen Guy. Obviously, as I'm sure you could have already seen, there are 6 screens on our desk, and so far we've only ever used one of them. Well, Screen Guy is here to change that. Throughout the night, at random, he has a chance to appear on any of the non-camera screens. He'll make a subtle sound cue when he appears, and all you have to do is click the monitor he occupies, and he'll go away. Incredibly basic character, not really much to worry about. Something about this night I want to mention is 2 two things that I learned. The first being that Green Man's name is Shut. I personally prefer Green Man, if I'm being honest. The second thing I learned while playing Night 4 is that as long as your maintenance panel is down, no matter which of the two screens you have selected, you will still do your task. Okay, let's just pump this up to 40. And now we'll shock. Oh, wait, it's still going. Well, isn't that just the best thing you've ever seen in your life? I didn't know it was gonna do all that now. Which means if I notice Marcus has left, now that I know I basically have to shock him twice to properly time it, I can start on my task, flip to the shock panel, and while I take a billion years shocking him twice, the task I selected will still be performed the entire time. I'm sure this was probably obvious to most people, but shut up, I just figured it out now. Anyways, on to Night 5, since there wasn't a whole lot to go over this time. Once again, Night 5 introduces nothing new and just goes about being a harder version of Night 4. While a little boring, there's nothing wrong with that. It is the first game in the series after all. However, there is something interesting to talk about. But before I talk about it, I want to mention the names of the characters I've failed to mention so far. Vent Guy's name is officially Dahomey. Yes, I'm serious. What a silly name. I personally prefer Vent Guy, I'm not gonna lie. And then the weird monitor guy's name is officially Shadow Marcus, which, by the way, I didn't mention this. If you ever don't click his monitor in time, he'll just appear behind you and disable your maintenance panel, ensuring that you will die. Anyways, on to that interesting thing I mentioned about 20 seconds ago. After completing Night 5, the game doesn't just end like I expected it to. Instead, we get this cutscene. But there we go. After completing Night 5, we get a sneak peek at possibly our antagonist, and Five Nights at Marcus comes to a close. But that's not before we're able to go into the extras menu and read a little bit about the characters. We see that Marcus was never finished being built, which is obviously why he has no legs. Shut was originally designed to be so tall for intimidation, as he was going to be a security robot, but he soon turned hostile. Dahomey goes into your vents because he's so small, and he was the last robot made before the company had to hand over all of their robots for investigation, which I find interesting because they're not being investigated in this game. They're just sitting in a building. And finally, the company has given no word as to what Shadow Marcus even is, so yeah, that doesn't sound weird and suspicious at all. So yeah, that's all Five Nights at Marcus has to offer. But of course, judging by the length of this video, you guys know we've got a lot more to talk about. And that's because this series actually has 2 additional games packed full of content. So let's move on to Five Nights at Marcus 2. Five Nights at Marcus 2, while not a remaster, don't let that fool you, as while graphically it may not look as good as the first game, mechanic-wise, I think it is pretty solid. And this game is much more stressful than the first. So let's get right into Night 1, because just like in the first game, there's no weird minigames. Night 1 drops us right into the office and really shows us how much more challenging this game is going to be. To start, let's talk about the tools at our disposal. Of course, we have our camera system, nothing special, and just like the last game, we're able to turn around to do our tasks. But we'll talk about what those tasks are in a bit because they are much more interesting than the first. Sticking to the front of our office, we have a flashlight that we can use to flash the large window in front of us. You'll notice there's 3 separate areas of this window you can flash. You'll also notice that this flashlight drains incredibly quickly, like really fast. So what do we do about that? While looking at the front of the office, you can flip down your maintenance panel in order to repair things or shock things. If your flashlight goes dead, simply repair it and it'll fill right back up. Nothing crazy. Now, let's move on to talking about the task-based system this game has, and why it's much more stressful than the first. To start, this time around, we're not just pressing a button and playing the waiting game. This time, it's actually something we have to pay attention to. We will receive several shipping containers throughout the night. When they arrive, we must scan them, which takes a while, and when they're scanned, we'll get some information about them on the left side of the screen. The information predetermined on the right side of the screen is what should be inside of the shipping container. If both sides match, we accept it. If they don't, we deny it. Every time we do this successfully, we gain a point, and if we
fuck up 5 times, we lose. Fucking up is pretty hard, but once these nights start to get more and more stressful, it will become apparent how messing this up could be easy. Do this 12 times and the night is complete. But of course, we all know it's not just that simple, as of course we do have other threats to deal with at the same time. Just like in the first game, Marcus himself is the only character introduced on night 1, and he is very simple. Even more simple than in the first game. However, he does drain a precious resource far more than any other character does. Marcus will move through the cameras to get to your window. Luckily, this time you'll actually be able to see him when he's at it. And when he is, all you have to do is spam your flashlight at him and he'll reset. But of course, with the flashlight draining so quickly, dealing with Marcus is not something you're going to want to be doing very often, as repairing the flashlight can take a hefty amount of time when you really don't have it. Plus, we'll need to use that flashlight to deal with the other threats that get introduced later, but for now, Marcus is all we have, so beating this night should be easy and we can move on to night 2. Night 2 honestly does way more than I expected it to, and is where I learned that this game has quite a few more characters than the first. So let's not waste any time and talk about the first threat this night introduces, Shut. Returning from the first game like Marcus, Shut plays a role in introducing a very important mechanic into the game, that being your shock system. Inside of your maintenance panel where you repair your flashlight, you'll notice a shock button at the bottom. Switching to the shock screen, you'll see you can shock either the vent or the office. Shut will slowly make his way to your office, and fun fact, whenever a character reaches camera 5, which is the camera right before they show up in your window, they will actually make a sound cue as you'll be able to hear them walking, which is very nice. When Shut shows up at your window, shock your office and he'll go away, wherein you'll then have to wait for the office shock to recharge. Not so bad. Hopefully we just don't get a fuck ton more characters that also require us to shock the office. The next threat introduced on this night goes by the name of Him. Stupid name, I know, but let's just roll with it, alright? Him will make his way to your office and show up at your window. When he does, all you have to do is shock the office and he'll leave. Uh-oh. Something tells me this game is about to get super repetitive and mind-numbing and luck-based. But those are the only new threats this night introduces. But before we move on to night 3, there's one more mechanic I need to mention now that we've brought up shocking. You only have 5 shocks. When you run out, you'll need to repair your shock to refill it. You usually have plenty of time to do this at this point of the game, but I get the funny feeling it's going to get a lot more difficult as we progress. But with that out of the way, we can move on to night 3. Night 3 only adds one new threat, and the way the game made him sound made me think he was going to be interesting.
What are the animatronics? Take a shortcut through the vents to your office. Make sure you flash.
What? 17! But I was sorely mistaken. This night introduces Vent Boy again. I already forgot his name, and I don't feel like checking again because I remember that it was something really stupid. Vent Boy does pretty much the exact same thing that he does in the first game, yet they somehow managed to make him more boring. Vent Boy obviously travels through your vents. When he makes it to your window, you'll see him directly in front of you. Unlike the original, where you have to shock the vent, this time around, you just treat him like Marcus and flash him a bunch of times until he leaves. Very boring. I don't know why they didn't make him a vent shot character, that just makes sense. It's also at this point of the video where I want to mention a pretty glaring flaw that this game has, and I'm sure you might have already caught on. There is so far no reason to ever check your cameras throughout this game, and in fact, even the sound cues aren't necessary, as you could pretty easily beat what we've talked about so far with the game muted. Here's what the strategy boils down to right now. Start the night and immediately start working on tasks. Every time you send a container, turn around and very quickly flash the 3 sections of the window to waste as little flashlight power as possible. If you don't see anyone, do your next task. If you do see someone, deal with them. If it's a shock character, shock them and then repair your flashlight before turning around and working on the next container. The only time you won't repair your light here is if you need to repair your shock instead. Repeat this 17 times for night 3 and you have it completed. Is this night hard? No. Do all of the characters make you feel intimidated? No. Why? Because even though we have 4 characters active at this point, there are still only 2 mechanics to deal with all of them, as this game continues to dive into the FNAF 2 repetition problem. But let's hold out some hope and move on to night 4. Night 4 is nothing special. No, literally, quite literally nothing new is added on this night at all. And for some reason, during my playthrough, which you can see over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, I actually got attacked far less times than I did on night 3, which I thought was really weird. The only thing that actually changes on this night is how many cargo containers you have, which on this night was 18. Boring stuff. Let's move on to night 5 where something interesting actually does happen. Night 5 does something different, thankfully, that being introducing one new threat that actually really changes something about the gameplay loop, which this game 100% needed. This new character is Vent Boy 2.0, and I'm calling him that because, once again, I forgot his fucking name. Vent Boy 2.0 adds something from the first game that I wasn't a super huge fan of. As I'm sure you could have guessed by his name, he travels through the vents, except unlike Dahomey, he doesn't drop down in front of you for you to flash. He works exactly how Marcus does from the first game. He'll travel through your vent cameras. Once you see him disappear from them, you know he's about to attack. During this time, all you have to do is shock the vent, and he'll reset. While not a hard mechanic by itself, it does hurt my dick that I actually have to try to beat this game now. Although, it is good that at least now finally on night 5, we have a reason to use the camera. Too bad we only get one night with him, as night 5 is the final night Five Nights at Marcus 2 has to offer. However, we still have one last game to talk about, and it's not called Five Nights at Marcus 3. I actually didn't even know that the next game we'll be talking about was even a part of this series, that game in question being Far From Land. So let's jump right into that. Far From Land starts in a very interesting way. Unlike both of the Five Nights at Marcus games, Far From Land actually has something other than just night sections, as this game opens to a cutscene about cargo ships that work for Celadon, and go figure, we play as the person driving this cargo ship. And oddly enough, we're referred to as Marcus by the phone guy. Hey, recording Dxtr once again. No, we fucking aren't. We're not called Marcus. I don't know why I fucking wrote that. We're called Malcolm. Guess I'm retarded. Anyways, let's continue. Speaking of the phone guy, he's nothing special on our first voyage in the game. He tells us how to deal with problems, blah, blah, blah. Let me do that for you guys. To start, once again, like the other games, Far From Land is a task-based completion system, which I really like. And this game's task is by far the most interesting and engaging so far. We have to literally just drive the fucking ship. That's the task. While we're piloting the ship, we will be able to see several icebergs in front of us. We will have to steer the ship away from these to avoid crashes. And once we reach a certain point, which is marked on a monitor in front of us, the voyage will be complete. Of course, it's not just as easy as that. We also have a maintenance room to keep track of. The ship we're on is very old and is prone to breaking down. We can check the ship's integrity with one of our monitors, and once it gets too low, the ship will stop moving and sirens will start to blare. At this time, we must go back to the maintenance room and fix one of a few busted pipes at random. Don't worry about the massive scary vent in front of us. We'll talk about that later. The only other thing for us to talk about on this night is the one threat this game introduces. I'm assuming this character is Shut, just given the fact how large this character really is. On one of our monitors in front of us, we can see a layout of the ship. Unlike every other game so far, we can't actually check the cameras, which is really a good thing since the last two games really didn't have any reason to. Every time a character moves, we will get a signal on this monitor to show us exactly where they are. Obviously, Shut is the only character active on this night, so he's all we have to talk about. Shut, being the most basic of the characters, does the most basic thing. He will wander around the ship until he reaches the hallway directly behind you. You'll be able to hear him when he arrives. Turning around will show him inside of the hallway, but you don't have to do anything at this point. The next time Shut moves, he will be right up next to you, so you need to make sure you're facing the hallway when this happens. As he walks up to you, you'll need to hold your breath so he thinks you're not alive or something. He'll check you out, make sure you're a robot or something, and then he'll turn around and leave, and you can go back to driving the ship. Very simple character, but I do think him getting so close to you is super cool. But that's all the first voyage has to offer. But good news for us, in this game, there's actually something to do after each night instead of just moving on to the next. We have the first post-voyage section where we need to fix up our old bum-ass ship. During this section, we're in an area that's dark as fuck. We're equipped with a flashlight and a checklist. We'll have to find several jerry cans around the map, fix several pipes, shut off the power, and find and replace the fuse of the ship's generator. Then this night will truly be over. Of course, it's not just as simple as that, as there is a threat lurking around. Do I know the name of this character? Just like most other characters introduced in this series, no. But I'm sure I'll find out the more that I play. For now, I'm going to call this character the Puppet because its drawing kinda looks like a discount marionette. The puppet will randomly wander around the ship as we're doing our tasks. This place is dark as fuck, and using our flashlight is essential. Every time we move to a new location, we'll have to pause and listen for the puppet's breathing. Even though it's a fucking robot, it still is loud. When we hear it, we must hold our breath until it leaves, wherein we can then continue our tasks. Very simple overall, but I do think it's really cool they're adding something to do after the main night sections. With that, we can move on to Voyage 2. Voyage 2 is much the same as the first. We've got a slightly longer distance to go and a new threat to talk about. This one being a lot scarier than the last. I want you to take a solid guess whether or not I know the name of this character. Do you think I do? What's that? You think I know the name of this character? Well, you haven't been watching this video then, because I have no fucking idea what this thing is called, so I'm gonna be calling him Water Guy. Hey, recording Dxtr here, once again, I'm back. Apparently this is fucking Marcus. Does it look like Marcus? No, but it's Marcus. Water Guy uses a mechanic that has to do with water, if you couldn't have guessed based on how I named him. One of the monitors on the panel in front of us shows off our water integrity. This is basically just explaining how much water the ship is currently storing. Pulling the lever next to it will increase how much water is stored if it ever decreases. But that brings up the question of how it decreases. Well, that's where Water Guy comes into play. Just like Shut, he will make his way to where we are. However, he uses a different entrance. If you turn to where Shut attacks and then turn left, you'll see a new door. This door has no light and there's no way to see into the doorway. I'm sure you can see where this might be going. And you'd be right. You will not be able to see Water Guy when he's in the door. And with no cameras, how are you supposed to track him? Well, that's where that trusty motion detector comes into play. When you see that he's near the entrance, quickly whip around to that doorway and pull a yellow lever that releases a sprinkler system into the doorway for some reason. Not really sure why this is here, but it is. When you do, you'll see Water Guy spark, since you know he's a robot and they don't really fuck with water and such, and then he'll reset. Nothing crazy, but he is for sure going to be one of the more annoying threats throughout this playthrough. So now, let's move on to the post-Voyage 2 section. Not even really sure why I'm talking about this section. It's the exact same as the last one, except the objects are placed randomly somewhere else, and it seems that whatever monster is down here is more aggressive. Overall, super simple. It's time to move on to Voyage 3. Voyage 3 is longer than Voyage 2. This is going to be a pattern that repeats itself. Also offered on this voyage is yet another threat for us to worry about, that being Dahomey. A character I surprisingly remembered the name of, but that's only because it's so fucking stupid. Dahomey, like he is in the other games, is a vent character. And where is the only vent on the ship we can access? That's right, the maintenance room. Luckily, we can track him on the motion detector like the other characters, and when we see him in the vent, all we have to do is whip over to it and hold our flashlight on him until he goes away. Very easy, but it is another character to drag us away from the task that continues to get longer and longer each night, but that's all this voyage adds. Moving on to the post-voyage section, which is actually something different this time. Instead of inspecting the top deck, this time we're inspecting the bottom deck. In it, we have another plethora of tasks, such as fixing leaky pipes, replacing fire extinguishers, rearranging pipes, and finally refueling the ship. All of these tasks are pretty simple. However, there is one threat looming over our heads, quite literally the entire time. That being the puppet-looking thing again. Hey, recording Dxtr again. This is a different fucking puppet. I don't know its name, but it's a different one. Occasionally, while we're walking around the lower deck, he'll drop down from a vent in the ceiling. Using a wrench we acquire on this night to complete our tasks, we have to whack the shit out of him to make him jump back into the vents. We only have a certain amount of stamina, and since we need to swing the wrench to fix leaky pipes, we have to balance how much we're swinging at once. Once we get into the final room, all we do is refuel the ship and we're ready to move on to the next voyage. However, before we do that, I want to talk about something stupid that this game has. Quite a few months back, I was actually playing this game on my second channel, Dxtr Black, but I stopped on episode 3 because this post-voyage section of the game was bugged. I said I'd come back to the game after it was fixed. What would happen is that the game would literally just freeze when doing certain things, and I was even able to still replicate it now, which happened in my newest playthrough of the game. What? See, look, I already broke the game. Turns out this bug is all tied to the FPS of the game. If you use the highest FPS to 40 like I do, not only can this bug occur, but it will also fuck up your camera movement 6 ways to Sunday, making you whip around so fast it gives you whiplash. This is the same problem I was having all those months ago.
So, if you turn your FPS down to 60, not only will it fix the whole whiplash problem for some reason, it will also completely fix the freezing bug I had. I have no idea whatsoever how FPS has to play into any of this, and this is not the first game I've played with this weird problem. Weirdly enough, the Poppy Playtime games also have bugs on higher frame rates as well, the main one being that the grab pack will pull you upwards far fucking slower on higher FPS. Super weird, but I needed to point it out. On to voyage number 4, which is entirely new territory for me once again, and with this voyage comes one of the scariest threats yet. Lore-wise, not really gameplay-wise, I'm gonna be honest with you. During the phone call, it gets intercepted by a guy named Mason. I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to know who Mason is at this time, but I'm gonna be so honest, I have no idea who the fuck Mason is, and I really can't be fucked to figure it out. Mason talks about how this new threat, who he calls the Kraken, has gotten on the ship and that it's very dangerous. Apparently, this robot is what the company doesn't want anyone knowing about, and we're completely alone on this massive ship with it. The Kraken's mechanic is pretty interesting, but I think it could have been done a lot better. The Kraken can be seen on the front of the ship through your window while you're driving. By holding shift, you can cause the horn of the ship to go off. Whenever you see the Kraken, blow the horn like the hose do and he'll go away. When your horn integrity runs out, all you have to do is go to the maintenance room and fix a pipe, which will then fix your horn. I don't really know how that makes any sense, but don't question it. That's just what we have to do. The Kraken does have another mechanic, although I personally never saw it. The Kraken has a chance to enter your maintenance room. If you ever see him in there, just turn around and that's literally it. Hey, recording Dxtr again. This isn't the Kraken that does this in the maintenance room. It's another fucking character I don't know the name of, but yeah, no, he was just never mentioned by a phone guy. It's just fucked me, I guess. Overall, I think the Kraken could be a cool mechanic. He kind of hides like he knows you're looking for him, but he always hides in the same spot. I think it would be a lot cooler and a lot more interesting if the Kraken had several hiding spots throughout the front of the ship that he'd hide in at random. Doing this would not only make the gameplay loop more interesting, but also keep the player on their toes throughout the entire voyage. Now, moving on to the post-voyage section. Spoiler alert, it's exactly the same as the last one. Doing the same tasks, albeit one of the puzzles is different, but still very simple, and the puppet thing is still trying to turn our guts into soup. Refill the tank at the end of this section of the voyage, and it is over, and we can move on to the 5th voyage. Voyage 5 adds nothing new to the gameplay loop, just being a harder version of Voyage 4, and a lot harder, that is. The characters really ramp up their AI on this night and get a lot more aggressive, which is an oddly nice change of pace. What really gets interesting is this post-voyage cutscene.
Why are you doing this? You think you can just take us away and destroy us and leave no trace of us left? I don't want that. I don't want that to happen. You have made a mistake doing this, and you know that. Malcolm, I know everything about you. You are just like everyone else I've killed. Weak. Maybe I know why you are even here to begin with. Is it because of your brother? I know you're hurt. And I know you want to take revenge, but you know deep down that you'll never defeat me. Never come back here. Never tell anyone about this, or else you'll have to face me.
And with that, we're surprisingly thrown into a sixth voyage. A sixth night is something that none of the other games have had so far, so this actually makes me very surprised. And turns out this final voyage is a boss fight with the Kraken, which is the name of the robot we just saw in the cutscene, not actually the robot I was calling the Kraken earlier. I'm sure you could have guessed from this whole video, but I don't think the series is very good at explaining names. The Kraken obviously plays the role of all of the characters we've seen on the voyages so far, with a small twist when he plays as Shut and Dahomey. In both cases, when dealing with him, he activates a rat from Five Nights at Candy's 3 mechanic, where you have to track his head while he moves around. Awesome change of pace. I love that they added this little extra piece of detail, really ties everything together. The dude that sits outside of your front window, and Scrap, which is the name of the character that I thought was the Kraken that sat in your maintenance room, had a chance to do it, and you turn around, it's that guy, his name is Scrap. I found this out only because of the fucking settings at the end of the game, because they never say his fucking name in the game. It's just stupid as fuck. But that's really it. Deal with all of the characters and try to avoid the fact that the Kraken killed a guy and attached his rib cage and head to his own fucked up robot body. Yeah, tell me that's not the most fucked up shit you've ever heard in your life. After completing the voyage, we get one last cutscene where we seemingly willingly drive the ship right into a giant rock to sink the entire thing and destroy ourselves, along with the murder robots that are inside of it. Honestly, a very good decision in my opinion. Really taking one for the team there, Malcolm. I appreciate it, G. But with that, everything is destroyed. We unlock the extras where I learned Dahomey wasn't even Dahomey the entire time I've been calling him the wrong fucking name, and that there are like 7 human characters that have a paragraph of text beneath them, all characters I'm supposed to be familiar with. Spoiler alert, I am not, so I'm just gonna pretend like I never opened the extras menu, and I'll just say that Five Nights at Marcus series comes to a close. Overall, I really think that this is a great series. I think it started off pretty rocky, but overall it's clear you can see a real improvement from one game to another, especially with how amazing Far From Land is. Even though it has one of the stupidest bugs I've ever seen. I just really hate how lore-wise, I literally picked up none of it. Literally 0 pieces throughout my whole playthrough, which you can see over on my second channel, Dxtr Black. What's the coolest thing you've ever seen a FNAF game do? Has there ever been a moment where you're playing a game and something is revealed that absolutely blows your mind? I've recently been suggested a FNAF game that did exactly that, and I'm very excited to share it with you all. Today, I'll be talking about Fredbear's Fright, an amazing FNAF fan game made in 2017 by Garrett McKay. This game is heavily tied to the original Five Nights at Freddy's lore, with a twist at the end you're not going to want to miss, so I'd recommend sticking around to the end, because its ending is actually crazy. Let's not waste any more time and jump right into it. Fredbear's Fright opens with a cutscene that takes place in the office from FNAF 1. The screen turns upside down, and I'm actually not totally sure why that happens. If you guys know why, let me know in the comments. Afterwards, we're sent to the menu and we can jump straight in to night 1. Something really interesting about this game is that it actually takes place in the original Freddy Fazbear's location with a few tweaks. You'll notice the only door you have is your left one, the right door being replaced with a small vent on the ground that can also be closed via door. You can see above the vent a panel with numbers on it, but we'll get into what that is later. Additionally, on the ceiling there's a lever you can pull that causes water to sprinkle into the office. I will get to that in a moment also. The animatronics in this game are mostly original aside from the 2 main ones, those being Dismantled Spring Bonnie and Dismantled Fredbear. We'll talk about Fredbear later because on night 1 only Dismantled Spring Bonnie and scrapped Mousiki? I'm just gonna say Mousiki are active, so let's talk about them. Spring Bonnie acts as one of the main antagonists in Fredbear's Fright, and will probably be the character you see the most of in your playthrough. And if you take a look at him, you'll notice he is absolutely big back. This motherfucker never leaves the line at the Golden Corral. He starts on the main stage and moves towards your office. He moves to your right side to attempt to enter your vent. You'll be able to tell when he enters your vent because you'll hear the vent banging. Unlike shitty ass, fuck ass Five Nights at Freddy's 2 vent noises, there are actually different noises for different circumstances so that you can actually tell what's going on, which I'm sure everyone can appreciate. When Bonnie, or any other character for that matter, first enters your vent, you will hear exactly 2 vent bangs. Once he's in your vent, just close the vent door. After this, there are 2 other possible vent noises that will be heard depending on which night you're on. If you hear just a single bang, that means whatever is in your vent has left, and you're safe to open the vent door. However, if you hear more than 2 vent bangs, that means that whatever was in your vent just swapped places with someone else, and you should keep your vent closed. This is so incredibly helpful, it cannot go unnoticed. Because of this sound system, it doesn't make you rely on the cameras to tell the location of animatronics that attack from the vent. This is miles better than what FNAF 2 does, where every single possible movement in the vents uses the exact same fucking sound. And if you're on a super busy night like 10-20 mode, the vent noises will actually start to overlap each other, making it borderline impossible to tell what the hell is going on. Now let's talk about scrapped Mouseikie. Mouseikie is only ever visible on 2 cameras, camera 7 and camera 6. He will start on camera 7, and let me say, he looks scary as fuck, I'm not even gonna lie. He will move to camera 6, and when he moves again, he will disappear from the cameras entirely. Shortly after, you'll be able to find him at your left door when using the door light. What the fuck? All you have to do is simply close the door, and he'll promptly piss off. Mouseikie will almost never be a real problem until later nights with a certain character I'll talk about later. Get to 6 AM and congrats, you're ready for night 2. After most nights in Fredbear's Frights, you will have to play an 8-bit classic FNAF minigame. The first minigame has you play as Fredbear on a stage with Spring Bonnie. You'll sing to the children for a short amount of time before the curtains close, and Purple Guy will come on stage and presumably turn the animatronics off. Oh boy, Pussy Guy is going to do something devious, I already know it! Anyways, on to night 2, which surprisingly doesn't have any of the animatronics that were active last night present. This night introduces 4 new characters: Dismantled Fredbear, the Hand Puppets, and Prototype. No, not the Prototype from Poppy Playtime. I don't know why I assumed you think it was. Probably because all you chronic gooners are brain rotted. Yeah, we'll go with that. Dismantled Freddy is one of the easiest animatronics to deal with. However, he can be pretty annoying when he attacks at a non-optimal time. Fredbear begins on stage just like Bonnie, he'll make his way to your office. But unlike every other character, you cannot prevent him from entering your office. He enters a room that you can't see on your cameras that's located behind your office. Once there, he'll wait for you to lift up your camera. You'll be able to hear that he's entered your office when you hear 2 thumps. Upon pulling your camera down, you'll be able to see him standing in front of you menacingly, and as tempted as you might be to immediately become physically affectionate with him, I encourage you to rethink your choices because you have to remember that he's a robot and not an actual living being that you can have relations with. This is where the sprinkler system becomes important. On the bottom of your screen, you'll see a water meter, indicating how much water you have left. When you pull the lever on the ceiling, water will start to rain down and decrease your meter. It's very important you don't use this water up because it's directly how you deal with Fredbear. The phone guy tells us that water will mess with the animatronics because, no shit, they're robots. He really didn't have to explain that one to us, but okay. So when Fredbear is in your office, just spray some water on him and he'll eventually go away. Something I want to mention is how unlikely it is that you'll run out of water. Even on the harder nights, I never had to deal with Fredbear more than like 3 times, and it doesn't take much water to make him go away. Safe to say, Fredbear is never a character you'll really have to worry about. That is, considering he doesn't show up when someone is at your door or enters your vent. You see, when Fredbear is in your office, you will be unable to interact with any buttons in your office besides the water lever. This means no closing the door, checking the hall light, or closing the vent door. I'm sure you can see where this could become a big problem. Let's move on to the hand puppets. There are 2 of them, a Spring Bonnie puppet and a Fredbear puppet, both of them being on the same camera. However, these 2 puppets move separately from one another, really acting as 2 animatronics. However, they function the same. Both act exactly the same as Spring Bonnie, going to the right vent and attempting to enter your office. You deal with them the same way as you do Bonnie, just by shutting the vent. The same vent noise system still applies with these 2. And my theory for their existence is purely to force you to listen and understand the vent noises, which is something I think is actually really cool. The final character to talk about is Prototype. Oh boy, Prototype. Prototype acts as the Foxy of this game. Similar to him, he has several phases on Cam 1B.
he will slowly move through these phases and, just like Foxy, can be slowed down by watching him on the cameras. Once he leaves Cam 1B, you know he's on his way to your office. Oh, fuck! The endoskeleton! It's on the move, bro! And you'll have to quickly close your left door. But there is a problem you'll probably notice. The game mentions that you'll know the prototype has reached your door when he pounds on it, just like Foxy does. Except the only problem with that is, at least for me, no pounding sound is ever played. I never had a sound cue from Prototype. Instead, what I had to do was check the cameras to see if he had gone back to camera 1B. This wasn't really a huge issue for me overall, since I was constantly checking the camera throughout the night anyways, but I did probably end up losing way more power than I ever needed to. Something I want to mention about the power system, by the way. It's incredibly forgiving. You'll notice it decreases pretty slowly even when you're using a lot of power draining systems at a time. Power is usually something you'll never have to really worry about. Obviously, if you keep your doors closed all night, you're going to have a problem, but if you're playing normally, you probably won't even end up thinking about your power. But now, let's talk about Night 2's post-night minigame. In this game, you play as Foxy, dancing for the kids on stage before the curtain close, and Purpley Werpley fucks his shit up, ending the minigame. That's really it. Time for Night 3. Night 3 includes Bonnie, Prototype, Mousakey, the hand puppets, and a brand new character who is incredibly stress-inducing, Scrapped Fredbear. Scrapped Fredbear acts as an incredibly unique character that will cause more anxiety than driving right next to a semi-truck. Scrapped Freddy technically isn't a threat to you, at least lore-wise he isn't. According to the help menu, Scrapped Freddy doesn't actually want to hurt you. Scrapped Freddy works a lot like Golden Call from Dormitibus. He'll wander around the camera until he finds a phone. When he does, he'll call your office and give you a code to deactivate his AI. This is, again, according to his help menu, because he doesn't want to attack you, which I think is really interesting. When he calls your office and lists this code, you will have to use the number pad I mentioned earlier in this video to punch in the numbers. You don't have to press them as he's saying them, but once he's done reading off the code, he will hang up after a short amount of time, and if you don't have the code typed in by the time he hangs up, your ass is on the line and he's about to snort that shit. Typically, he gives you 4 numbers, but I've had him give me 5 or sometimes even 6. This can become very stressful, because you'll need to keep track of everything else going on, so you don't really have the time to put everything on pause just to focus on the code. So you'll have to keep repeating the code in your head so you don't forget as you're dealing with all of the other problems. Ooh.
5, 7, 4, 2, 5.
You bitch! I was typing that, you ass! But if you can handle all that bullshit at once, you're home clear of Night 3 and can move on to Night 4. But first, we have the post-Night 3 minigame to talk about. In this game, you play as Fredbear again and have to deliver cake to 3 children. After doing so, you walk over to a door and get yanked inside by Purple Guy and his little grubby dirty ass fingers. Fucking yuck, am I right? But now it's time for Night 4, and let me tell you, this night is super fucking cool. The night starts off normal, with every character we've seen thus far active. However, Phone Guy tells us that Prototype has done something terrible and doesn't explain what.
Prototype is doing something terrible. Tonight has been very good for me.
Shortly after, you can hear something on his side of the line scream, and the call abruptly ends. The night continues as normal, and throughout this night, you'll notice that the Prototype is nowhere to be found. Where the fuck is the Prototype? Hello? At 1 a.m., every other animatronic in the building disappears, and the real threat of this night shows itself. Fright. Fright is the final boss of Fredbear's Fright, acting as one final battle. Fright is presumably the Prototype, but you'll notice that he's made up of pieces of all of the other animatronics, which leads me to believe that the reason they all disappeared is because the Prototype destroyed and mangled all of them, making them part of him. You know what? Maybe this Prototype does share a lot of similarities to the Prototype from Poppy Playtime. Fright can be tricky, and it's not because his mechanics are particularly difficult, but instead because of how incredibly fast he is. Fright can attack from both the left door and right vent. He will only be visible on camera 6 and camera 4B. If you see him on camera 6, he's more than likely about to attack your door. The moment he disappears from the camera, very quickly he will be at your door. Close it as fast as you can because you will not have much time. You'll have to keep checking the cameras to figure out when he's left your door, and when he does, it won't be long until he attacks you again. If you see him on camera 4B, he's about to attack your vent. Same thing with camera 6. When he leaves, you'll soon hear him pound on your vent, and you'll quickly need to close it. Again, this night isn't hard because of what Fright does, it's hard because of how fast he does it. You'll need to be on your toes all night and be precise while also keeping your cool. This night acts as a very fun and quick night. It's incredibly satisfying to play once you get into the groove, which is something I really like about this game. It's very satisfying to play because it's balanced very nicely. If you can control your nerves until 6 a.m., the night ends. But not how you might think. Rather than getting your 6 a.m. screen, Fright reaches your office, and there's no way to stop this from happening. You get jump scared by him, and a cutscene begins. The cutscene looks to take place in the original FNAF 1 location before the reworks to the building that we've seen in the game. Whoever we're playing with holds up a phone and makes a call. It's at this moment we get what I feel is one of the coolest scenes from any FNAF game I've ever played. It's revealed that we're the phone guy from FNAF 1, and we start giving the call you can hear on night 4 of Five Nights at Freddy's 1, which of course is the infamous death of his character, except this time we see it from his point of view.
Yeah, I always wondered what was in all those empty heads.
Dude, what? What?
Oh no.
Oh, damn! Yo, that was fucking sick! Dude, we were playing as the phone guy, you're joking! And this is how night 4 concludes. This is actually so fucking cool. This reveal right here is the main reason I chose to make a video about this game. It's so simple, but I absolutely love it when games have fun reveals like this. But would you believe me if I said Night 5 was even cooler? Let's talk about it. Night 5 takes place in the unmodified FNAF 1 building, with us playing as the phone guy again. But this time, we're in the back room stuffed in a suit. This night actually takes place sometime after he made the call on night 4, revealing that Freddy never killed him in the office, instead dragging him to the back room and stuffing him into one of the empty spring-lock suits that he wanted Michael to check on. This night consists of phone guy trying to survive until 6 a.m. so that someone can come and rescue him in the morning from the suit he's trapped in. You'll notice that this night starts at 2 a.m. instead of 12. This is because it takes place technically during night 4, which he made his final call during. So of course, some time has passed. This is so fucking cool! I can't get enough of this. But let's talk about the gameplay of this night. You have to prevent the spring-lock suit you're sitting in from closing by holding space. Throughout the night, Freddy and Bonnie will be checking in on you by opening the door and watching you. Whenever either of them peek in, you'll have to stop holding space and play dead. Once they leave, you're free to continue. Additionally, you'll have frequent hallucinations that will require you to close your eyes by pressing shift. The hallucinations make very loud noises and closing your eyes blocks your vision. Fucking obviously. So, when you have your eyes closed, I'd let go of space, since you won't be able to tell when Freddy or Bonnie enter. If they see that you're alive, they'll definitely gobble you up like the little gobble monsters they are. After surviving until 6 a.m., the night ends, and we get one final post-night minigame. This final minigame requires us to press A. When we do, we see Purple Guy press a button that seemingly activates the 4 animatronics. They walk out from behind a curtain and are in much worse shape than we've seen them in previous minigames, actually appearing to look like their nightmare variants from FNAF 4. They follow Afton into a room with the locked box from Five Nights at Freddy's 4 with a key laying next to it. If you click this key, you'll actually be able to collect it. The game ends soon after, whether you grab the key or not, giving you the normal ending. So, how do you get the true ending? Well, as I'm sure you could have guessed, we need to find the second key and unlock that box we see in the minigame. But where is the second key? I don't ever remember seeing it up until this point. Well, that's because it's actually very out of the way. On any night from nights 1 to 4, if you go to camera 6 and click on the Freddy poster in the background, you'll be sent to a secret minigame. In this minigame, you play as Freddy and just have to move him across the screen and grab the key hanging from the ceiling. After you grab it, the minigame ends. Now, you might think you need to replay the 4th night minigame to open the box at the end, but that would actually be incorrect. Instead, we get the ability to open the box after we finish one final challenge, Insane Mode, which is accessed through the Extras menu. Insane Mode is exactly what you think it'd be, a high-pressure, difficult night where all characters are active. The only real problems of this night are Prototype and Scrapped Fredbear, because they have a pretty deadly combo when you have to take time to punch in Freddy's code while Prototype is having to move. Since you won't be able to watch and stall him enough to stop him from charging your door, most other characters aren't a huge problem. Just make sure you're really listening and paying attention to the vent noises so you know when you should have the vent closed and when it's safe to keep it open. After you beat Insane Mode, you will see the locked box. As long as you've collected both keys, you'll be able to undo both locks and see what's inside. After the box opens, the screen will start to glitch, and if you look closely, you'll actually be able to see 4 faces between the locks, presumably a reference to the 4 dead children. Finally, one last cutscene plays. On a desk, you'll be able to see what appears to be the newspaper we saw at the beginning of the game, with someone named Radio Man calling us. He says he thinks he might have a lead and asks us if we'd be willing to go to an unknown location by ourselves. He says there's no guarantee we'll be able to find him there, not knowing who he is or where there is. The call ends with Radio Man asking us to return his call as soon as we can. At first, I thought this was someone calling Michael Afton in reference to going to one of the Freddy locations to find and kill his father. Up until this point, it seemed that this game was heavily tied to the official games. But after doing some digging, I learned that this cutscene is actually a teaser to one of Garrett McKay's other games by the name of Fredbear and Friends Left to Rot. And with that, aside from Custom Night, that's all Fredbear Frights has to offer as far as I'm aware. I really liked this game. The twist of you playing as the phone guy at the end is honestly one of the coolest and most unique twists I've ever seen from a FNAF game. And Night 5 just topped it off even more. I have nothing but nice things to say about this game. It's not overtly and disgustingly difficult like a lot of FNAF games are, and that allows casual players to experience the story for themselves. But let me know what you think. Do you think Fredbear's Frights is as awesome as I do? Let me know in the comments. Also, let me know if you'd like to see me cover other games made by Garrett, as it appears that many of his games have a connected storyline. The question of this video is, what's the coolest thing you've seen from a FNAF game? With the question of the video being asked, I've been Dexter, and I'll see you all in the next video. See ya!